All right, let's go ahead and call the Senate to order. The Sergeant at Arms will please secure the doors. Members, please take your seats. We've got a very special and exciting morning this morning on this beautiful, rainy, perfectly appropriate, rainy St. Patrick's Day. So if we have everyone, Madam Clerk, if we could please call the roll.
Mr. President.
All right, Senators, this morning we are pleased to have the Reverend Canon Bernie Schroeder from Christ Church, Cambridge, in Cambridge, Maryland, guest of the distinguished senator from the 37th District. Please rise for the invocation.
Let us pray. O gracious and merciful God, you are with us every day in our deliberations, both private and public. Remain with us this day and cast your heavenly spirit on the senators here gathered, that they may follow your guidance of love and forbearance in all that they do. And we pray that you will kindle in every heart the true love of peace and guide with your wisdom those who take counsel for the nations of the earth. We pray especially for the brave citizens of Ukraine, who, though they live far away, are present in our hearts as they sue for peace. May this Senate and all governmental bodies of the world make decisions that engender peace in our community and in the communities of the nations. And may the peaceful blessing of St. Patrick be with us all. In God's holy name we pray. Amen.
All right, Chair recognizes the senator from the 37th District.
Thank you very much, members of the Senate and Mr. President. I am just so honored to have Father Bernie with us today. He has a very unique history. He grew up in the Midwest, and he had a strong political interest and a desire to engage in the political arena. So he followed his local congressman off to Washington as his top aide. For 30 years, he served in D.C. as one of the lobbyists, and also spent about 6 years as the CEO of a utility company, and tried very hard to make sure that the middle income or the middle businesses would privatize the transmission lines. So it's with great honor now that he serves us at Christ Church in Cambridge, where he is very, very sensitive to all of the dynamics that go on in church life, and he uses all of his expertise very well. So I'm honored to have him, and I move that his prayer is journalized. And thank you, Father Bernie.
Without objection, we will certainly journalize our Father's wonderful invocation this morning. We're so pleased to have him on this St. Patrick's Day. Has everybody recorded their presence in the chamber? Missing a few here. All right. The clerk will take the call. With 39 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland is now in session. Senators, we're going to start. Yesterday we had the BSO, which was a very, very nice event. Today we are incredibly, incredibly lucky and fortunate to be joined by some incredibly talented musicians, including one of our own, a former senator here, Senator Tim Ferguson, who I'm going to ask to join. For those of you who have not been in the chamber, we had this scheduled in 2020, and we had done it for several years in a row, off and on, and we had it scheduled in 2020 in March, and it was right, I think the day of that it was supposed to happen, that the call was made that we had to shut down and start closing everything down, and it was right at St. Patrick's Day of March of 2020. It's hard to believe that was 2 years ago, but here we are in March of 2022 with a different outlook and a much better future ahead. And so without further ado, would like to invite Senator Ferguson, my brother from another mother, no relation, but other than our cultural heritage here, to welcome the group and begin this wonderful presentation today.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. It was 20 years ago today when I first sang this. I was a sitting senator representing District 4. Senator Huff was my successor's successor, if I may use his name. I represented Frederick and Carroll County for many years. I was born and raised in Middle River, Maryland, so whoever the senator is who represents Middle River. A shout out to you. My present senator, I live in Huntingtown, which is Calvert County, is Senator Michael Jackson. So, and I have a lot of good friends here, and of course, wherever I go in Calvert County, Mr. President, if your security detail or you ever hear of somebody running around in Calvert County using your name to get into the best seats of a movie theater or a restaurant, it's not an imposter, it's me. So we're gonna have fun today. We're gonna sing this song. This is probably gonna be very emotional for me. This is the first time we've ever done this without Mike Miller being the president. And so I dedicate this song to the president, the President Emeritus of the great Maryland Senate, Mike Miller. So, bagpipers, commence. The quartet. Oh, Danny boy, the pipes are calling from glen to glen and down the mountainside. The summer's gone and all the roses dying. 'Tis you must go and I must bide. But come ye back when summer's in the meadow, or when the valley's hushed and white with snow. 'Tis I'll be here in sunshine or in shadow. Oh, Mikey boy, we love you so. And when ye come and all the flowers are dying, and I am dead as dead I will may be. You'll come and find the place where I am lying, and kneel and say an Ave there for me. For I shall hear the soft your tread above me, and on my grave shall warmer, sweeter be. For ye shall bend and tell me that you love me, and I shall sleep in peace until you come to me. Thank you. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the bagpipers. Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, I just want to very quickly introduce our musicians. Your Senate resolutions will be back here. I'm not going to read them out. And I'm sure the President, after I read the names, is probably going to want to take a roll call for the adoption of the resolutions. But our musicians today, ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce the folks who have been here before in years past. Mr. Randy Welch, one of the bagpipers. Mr. Michael Binney, the other bagpiper. Our conductor, who has been here with me from the beginning 20 years ago, Mr. Roddy Santos, right here, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, Jonathan Terry has been with us for a long time, the cellist, ladies and gentlemen. The first violinist, Nathaniel Drablit, is here. And the second violinist is Patricia Week-Schramm. So, this is an election year. I wish you all Godspeed. 20 years ago, Mr. President, when I sang this song in 2002, that was an election year, and I had no idea that I was not coming back. So, Godspeed to you. My successor, David Brinkley, did a wonderful job. His successor is doing a wonderful job. And Senator Jackson, we'll be in touch. I want to help you win your re-election. Okay? So, I am a Democrat. I just want you to know that. I was a Republican for many years, but I've gone back to my roots. Born and raised a Kennedy, Irish, Roman Catholic Democrat. Now I'm a Protestant Democrat, but I think that'll work. So don't call me, I'll call you. So we'll be in touch. Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, well, we thank the musicians. Thank you so much. Thank you, Senator Ferguson, for being here today. We so greatly appreciate it. And I believe that Senator Ferguson is going to bring all the musicians back into the lounge to be able to provide the citations. And so one last round of applause for the folks for everything they did, please. All right, we've had quite the, I figure this is, we're bringing back in person, you bring all the things, right? Make sure that we remind ourselves what we can do when we are together. All right. Let's see. We'll go ahead and, are we going to do the pages now? Oh. All right, let's after the chairs are out of here as we're adjusting, we will recognize the co-chair of the Protocol Committee. Well, actually, let's do other introductions while we're waiting for the pages to come back. Any other introductions? Senator from Montgomery County?
With me today, shadowing me, is Neil Burka, a Gaithersburg resident, a constituent and a friend, and not running for anything, Mr. President.
All right. Welcome, Mr. Burka. Thank you for being here. Yes, Chair recognizes the other senator from Montgomery County.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Permission to use the senator's name?
Senator may proceed.
So this morning I woke up, helped get the kids ready. Remember, it was March 17th, enough to wish my mom a happy birthday. But I still came in not wearing green, but I was rescued by Senator Klossmeyer. Senator Klossmeyer, thank you so much for the scarf. I appreciate it.
I just want to know,
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Is it green leopard print or is it just green? Is that
Whatever the senator wishes it to be.
Fair enough. Chair recognizes Senator from the 27th District.
Thank you, Mr. President, and it would be truly nice to have those words from Senator Ferguson journalized, particularly about my election. But anyway, so I'd like to introduce in the gallery one of my interns from Northern High School, championship football team, Northern High School, a sophomore at Towson University, Samantha Forst. Samantha, if you stand up, could you all help me recognize and welcome her? A Calvert County resident. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Senator. Welcome to the Senate. I think we have all of our pages back. Let's do co-chair of the Protocol Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 4 pages with us today. They've been, as you know, out working with us virtually, so this is an opportunity to get to meet them individually. So, first of all, Sarah Hulskamp from Garrett County, District 1A, Northern High School. Grace, go ahead, and we'll give her a round of applause. Next, we have Grace O'Baker, Allegheny County, District 1B, Mountain Ridge High School. Hi, Grace. Robert Sewell from Calvert County, District 27, C, Calvert County High School, and Tolu Depo Adiamo from Charles County District 28 North Point High School. Please welcome them. And
Well-
thank you so much, Pages, for being with us. We know you'll have an exciting day. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you so much, Senator. And Chair recognizes the Senator from District 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to give a shout out to Sarah. She lives in my hometown. She goes to one of the other northern high schools in the state of Maryland, and she's very active in our robotics, one of the leaders in robotics. And I will tell you all that Garrett County is known throughout the state of Maryland, the United States of America, and the world because they've won national, international awards for robotics. We're one of the leading robotics groups in the whole world, and I'd like to thank her for all that she's doing for us.
Wonderful, wonderful work. Well, you all are here for a reason because you are our best and brightest. We hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day today. You're going to be busy on this floor, so we're going to get lots of steps in, I promise you. All right, well, if you all could take your seats, thank you very, very, very much. Any other introductions before we get moving? Any other announcements? Chair recognizes the Senator from Anne Arundel? No?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have some guests today from the representing the Multiple Sclerosis Society, and I'd like to introduce them, and I think we have a proclamation. So will Lynn Murhai and her husband David Basari please come up? Lynn and her husband actually live in District 31 in Glen Burnie. Lynn has multiple sclerosis, MS, and she's been volunteering with the National MS Society DC Maryland chapter for almost 10 years. She's currently the chairperson of the Community Council of Maryland, and she's working hard to raise awareness of MS throughout the state. MS is an unpredictable, often disabling disease of the central nervous system that disrupts the flow of information within the brain and between the brain and body. Symptoms range from blurred vision, loss of balance, poor coordination, slurred speech, tremors, numbness, extreme fatigue, problems with memory and concentration, paralysis, blindness, and more. MS is different for everyone, and that makes it all the more challenging. There are over 4,100 people living with MS in Anne Arundel and Baltimore County alone, and almost 1 million people with MS in the United States. This week, March 13th through 19th, is MS Awareness Week, and MS hasn't stopped due to COVID, and neither can we. Thank you to Mrs. Murhai for your volunteer work raising awareness about MS. And if we can read the proclamation, please.
Clerk will read the resolution in full.
Be it hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to the National MS Society DC Maryland chapter in recognition of your dedication and support to fight the unpredictable and often disabling disease, multiple sclerosis, for the citizens of Maryland. The entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution be presented on this 17th day of March 2022.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? If we could, everyone. All right, the clerk will take the call. For our representatives of the MS Society, the National MS Society, Maryland DC chapter, the Senate of Maryland unanimously celebrates your work, and thank you so much for your advocacy. We so deeply appreciate what you are doing to help improve the lives of those who are diagnosed with MS every day. Thank you all so much.
Mr. President,
Oh, yeah. Yes, Chair recognizes the Senator from the 33rd District.
if I may, in support of this resolution and the work that these fine people do, my daughter has MS, and we've known it for about 15 years. It seems to subside a little bit when she has become pregnant 3 times since she's been diagnosed. And if you don't know, MS comes in many flavors. Some of it very mild, some of it very severe. But it affects a lot of people. It's that silent disease that you really can't see. My family and I were fortunate enough to do a bike ride for MS. We raised $18,000, and I biked 150 miles in 2 days. I had to get a big bike. The work that they do for awareness, education, and sensitivity is very important. I have joined over the years with my 911 comrade to support the Walk for MS in different ways. For her, I send her a check and she can walk. Bike riding is better for me. Mr. President, very important issue. Thank you for your work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. All right, any other pieces of business before we jump in today? If not, so we consider the reading of the journal from the prior legislative day. We're going to be a little bit haptic today because we are a few senators had prior engagements for one reason or another, so we're going to try and get we're going to give them some leeway so that they can get here in time for some of the third readers. Let's go ahead and start. We have a supplemental budget that came down today. A message from the executive, if the clerk could read the message.
Dear Mr. President, pursuant to the authority conferred on me by Article 2, Section 52, subsection 5 of the Constitution of Maryland, and in accordance with the consent of the House of Delegates duly granted, I hereby submit Supplemental Budget Number 2 to Senate Bill 290, House Bill 300, in the form of an amendment to the budget for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2023. Supplemental Budget Number 2 affects the previously estimated funds available for budget operations as shown in the following statement. Sincerely, Lawrence J. Hogan, Jr., Governor.
Message having been read is ordered journalized. So, Budget Committee, we have the budget on the floor. Now we've got a supplemental, so we will reconcile before we get to the end here. I suspect this will not be the last supplemental that we see. We shall see. All right, let's go to late over calendar number 31. The clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 705, Senator Zucker. Education, physical restraint and seclusion, limitations, reporting and training. Question is on the adoption of the committee amendments and the favorable report.
All right, Senators, question is on the two committee amendments. Is there discussion on the amendments? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Chair recognizes the senator from the 34th District. The pages will please collect and distribute to the senator's amendments. And pages, normally you would get a week to practice this. Sometimes our senators are hard at work reading through things, so if they don't grab it, just feel free to drop it on their desks. We do the best we can. All right, Senator will explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this is an amendment to page 3 of the bill, or I guess it's really the reprint, which is probably the same as the bill. We had some discussion on this the other day. Certainly, I remember when the senator from Frederick talked earlier in the session about inappropriate use of isolation in his district of juveniles. And so I understand there can be a problem. The challenge we face, though, is that there has to be a balance. There has to be a balance between the interests of children who would be restrained and the other 30 or so kids in the class, right? There has to be a balance between how we treat the one versus the 29 or 30 or whatever the number is in the class. My position is that the interests of a child acting out, those only go so far, and they certainly don't extend to the nose or the eye or the face of any part of the body of another child in the classroom. That at some point, this stops. And you know, you look at the trauma. I mean, I remember as a kid being around any kind of, for those of us who are fortunate enough not to grow up in traumatic households, you know, the sight of anybody being in a fight was traumatic at first grade. That's tough stuff. So at some point, what's the impact? This amendment, it simply says that the teachers can use a physical restraint, and they don't have to wait until the other children are in imminent, serious physical harm. This simply eliminates the words imminent and serious. It doesn't even eliminate the word physical. Okay, and that's pretty noteworthy because we're not talking mental harm. So we're not restraining kids simply because they're going to watch behavior that's going to leave them mentally traumatized. Not even going there. No, never mind the fact that the behavior is going to leave other children in the room mentally traumatized, upset for the rest of the day, if not the week, if not months. We're not even going there with that. We're not going to mental trauma, right? I haven't even asked to change that, which quite simply, I don't know, maybe this body, I'm troubled by that. I'm troubled by that mental trauma would not be included, but we'll just stick with physical trauma for now. The idea that I would have to wait, teachers stand in loco parentis. Loco parentis means, quite simply, that adults who are there are acting as the parents. That's their job, and a teacher acts in loco parentis. I send my children, my grandchildren into your school. They're with an adult teacher. That teacher assumes the same role that I would have if I was escorting my child or grandchild down the sidewalk or through a fair. They act as the parent. They're there to protect every one of those children. They affect the legal parent of every kid in that classroom with the charge to protect them. And the idea that teacher could not step in and exercise physical restraint until there was imminent, serious physical harm, I just find grossly unacceptable. I can't imagine that. Now, the response to that when I brought it up the other day was that, well, you know, this is really the way the regs are now. That the Board of Ed regs already say this. That doesn't give me any bit of comfort. Quite frankly, I find it most disturbing that the regulations governing our teachers' behavior would not allow them to step in until there was imminent, serious physical harm. I want you to step in, teachers, the moment that you have a reasonable suspicion that child A's behavior is about to land on the nose of child B or in the eye of child B. I don't want you to have imminent danger. I don't want to have to be serious physical. I want you to stop this ASAP. We don't need to tolerate this. I'm not asking you to take the other child, and we're not supposed to call him the offending child. I'm not sure why, but we're not allowed to call him the offending child. The fact that the child is the one who's punching somebody in the nose, clearly in the parlance, doesn't make them an offender. Okay, I'll go with that. But the idea that we would allow that to come to a point where we would have to wait until it was imminent and serious. I don't know about you all, but I already hear in my district from teachers who are living with the current regulations that apparently allow this. And it's not good. The outcome is not good. As we watch around the state, as test scores fall, as we watch juvenile crime, juvenile behavior deteriorate, to allow this to be our standard of care, I just personally find just not at all acceptable. So I would move the amendment, branding it a very simple amendment. I'm not trying to, the bigger goal here that was discussed with this about not isolating children in the course of the school, I'm not going after that at all. That troubles me. The isolation part troubles me. As a father, as a grandfather, locking children in a room alone, that does trouble me. I have no problem with that part of the bill, honestly. That precludes that. But this part, I think, is a point where the child A's behavior is now seriously impacting the physical and mental well-being of the other children in the room. Troubles me greatly, and so I'd ask you to support this amendment, very simple amendment, and send a message of what the standard in this state is that we expect teachers to uphold to protect the classroom environment and all the teachers in there. Mr. President, I move the amendment. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Senator moves the amendment. Chair recognizes the floor leader on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleague, I just want to sort of restate, as I have in other contexts, that these laws and these revisions are in a broader context. So currently under state law, we're required to adopt policies that limit the use of restraint and seclusion. And it has to be in the context of comprehensive student protections, and including mandatory training. Okay, so that's in our law that we set regulations. And so MSD has set regulations, but I think it would be important for us to understand what we mean by physical restraint. Okay, so we have three types of restraint. We have physical restraint, we have mechanical restraint, and there is such a thing as chemical restraint. We don't allow chemical restraint in our schools. However, there are circumstances where the other two are used. And physical restraint does not mean holding a student to calm them. It does not include a physical escort where you temporarily touch or hold a hand or a wrist or a shoulder. It does not include disrupting a student, a disruptive student who is unwilling to leave an area. And it also does not include intervening in a fight. But I think you should also know what a physical restraint is and what we've heard in testimony so that you know why we want to limit it and have it only be used in emergency situations or imminent serious situations. Physical restraints are devices that limit child's movement. It's defined as a personal restriction that immobilizes. It includes vests, straps, belts, limb ties, wheelchair bars, brakes, chairs that tip backwards, tucking in sheets tightly, bed rails. It includes arm, leg, lat, vest restraints. It can involve up to 4 staff members holding a child down. You can place a chair close to a wall. You can put a heavy table or other device up. You can use a concave mattress. The chair prevents the child from rising, a seat belt, or a lap buddy. So these are when we say physical restraint, that's what we're talking about. So to the amendment, and so why there are some risks, and I need to share with you those risks. The risk of using restraints are life-threatening. Kids have died as a result of restraints. Students sometimes struggle against the physical restraints. It can cause skin wounds or block blood flow. It can also increase the child's heart rate and their breathing rate. Sometimes teachers are injured if they engage in physical restraint. And sometimes the child actually becomes more angry because of, as you might imagine, if any of those things happened to us. So that is why we use that definition. And also, finally, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry. Well, I want to explain because he's going to come back. So I just want to be very clear that I lay out the case, because the good gentleman laid out the case, out of context, so I want to give everyone context. So in the Code of Maryland Regulations, Code 13A-08.04.04, it says, again, if a student's behavior constitutes an emergency from imminent serious physical harm, that's in that section. There's another section where it says imminent serious harm, physical harm. So there are at least 3 other sections. The other thing, and this is the point why I asked for you to resist this amendment with confidence, it clearly states that this chapter does not prohibit school personnel from initiating appropriate student discipline pursuant to the Education Article 7-305, which we talked a lot about 3 weeks ago. And then also the chapter does not prohibit law enforcement, judicial authorities, school security from exercising their responsibilities, including the physical detainment of a student or other person aligned to have committed a crime or who is posing a threat, and relevant to law, regulation, or policy. So colleagues, this amendment is not necessary, and I ask for you to reject it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Senator Chair. Recognize the senator from the 38th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of the amendment. I first, though, want to thank the senator from Montgomery County and the senator from Frederick County on the legislation, which I support. The reason I support this amendment is I've actually been requesting reports, specifically in one of my counties, Wycomico County, from the Sheriff's Department, asking about the situations in the classroom and the interaction with the school resource officers and some of those situations. And hearing this amendment being offered is very reasonable to continue to allow the tools that they need in the classroom to be in place. Again, I support the overall bill, but this amendment is very narrow and, again, gives our teachers, and others the support and tools that they need in the classroom. So I urge my colleagues to support the amendment.
All right, thank you, Senator. On the amendment, any senators who have not yet spoken, Chair recognizes the bill sponsor on the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Just very quickly, this is a bad amendment right now based on regs. So this bill, the language that's in this bill right now wouldn't change nothing when it comes to restraint. If we accept the senator's amendment, then it would change the use of restraint. All the senator's concerns are already addressed in regs. Nothing will change. This weakens restraint, which is counteracts the purpose of this bill, is to focus on restraint, focus on seclusion, and try to limit it. I urge the body to resist this amendment. Thank you,
All
Mr.
right,
President.
on the amendment, any senators who have not yet spoken and wish to speak? If not, Chair recognizes the senator from the 34th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, just to respond briefly. It's important to understand the arguments that are being made against this amendment. We keep bringing up Comar and the regs. This is the law we're talking about here. The regs don't matter to our discussion. We're setting the law. You use the law to derive the regs. So whatever the regs say right now is irrelevant. It shouldn't matter to us one bit. We're setting the law. We set the law, then the bureaucrats use the law and say this is the public policy, and they set the regs. This is our public policy. We're setting the public, that's what this body's about. We set the public policy, not the bureaucrats in the Department of Education. That's us. And this is our statement of public policy. And to say, well, this law isn't necessary because we have some other regs. That doesn't follow. This is the law, this is our policy. What we say here is what the bureaucrats will then take and implement their regs. They can change their regs pretty easily to match that's why regs are there, because they can change them 365 days a year. We only meet 90 days a year. So they take these, what we say in the 90 days, and they spend 365 days writing regs. They can do it really fast. That's the whole reason for the regulatory system, is they don't have to come back to us. We set the policy, they do the regs. So that's just take that one out. The other part is, we argued what was the definition. Well, the definition of the statute that says right here in the amendment says physical restraint means a personal restriction that immobilizes a student or reduces the ability of the student to move their torso, arms, legs, or head, right? So anything that constrains them. Now we say, well, that would also include putting them in a straitjacket. Well, sure it does. It would also include locking them in a closet. I mean, I'm sorry, but you can't argue, we're arguing the absurdum here. What we have to say is, what's the minimal they can do? Well, they can't do anything. They can't do, this restricts their ability to immobilize a student's ability to move their arms. Oh, you mean like the arms they were using to punch the stuffings out of the little girl next to them? Those arms? Right? I'm not asking you to put the kid in a straitjacket. I would oppose that. I'm not telling you should bring, 3/4 inch rope in and tie kids up in the corner. That's what we're talking about here. The reasonable restraint that this includes the teacher simply giving a bear hug around, putting her arms around the little boy so he can't take his two little palms and smack the stuffings out of the little girl next to him. That's the kind of restraint this precludes. Does it preclude straitjackets? Well, yeah, too, but if you want to make that clear, I have no problem with those amendments. If we want to say no straitjackets at all, no 3/4 inch rope to bind kids, I'm on with those amendments. You count me in. But I'm talking about what we see in the classroom every day. This precludes normal teachers from using what we all grew up with, normal measures, to say, Johnny, you can't knock the crap out of that little kid next to you. This precludes that unless she can say imminent, serious physical harm. And that's a sliding slope. Teachers don't want to get sued. They don't want to get fired. What's imminent, what's serious, I don't know, you don't know, they don't know. So what do? They don't restrain because they don't want to get fired, right? Okay, so that's what this is about, is giving teachers the latitude to teach, teachers the latitude to act in loco parentis, teachers the latitude to think. We require bachelor's degrees. We encourage them to go for master's degrees. We're very selective with these people. Why don't we trust them? Why don't we trust them to do the jobs that they hired on to do? Are we afraid of that? Something's wrong here, folks. This needs to go. We need to give the teachers the latitude to protect their other kids and to teach and establish an appropriate atmosphere in the classroom. I urge you to support the amendment. Thank you very much.
All right, I think we know the issue.
Just finally,
on
just
the amendment,
I cannot
the chair
allow,
recognizes the floor leader.
I cannot allow misdirection. Under current Maryland law, not in regs, it does not include moving a disruptive student. It does not include escorting or touching or for the purposes of moving a student. It does not include any of the things that have just been portrayed. So again, I appreciate that. I just want to correct the record for those listening. In Maryland law, not in regs, it allows teachers to do and law enforcement to do what they need to keep our children safe. Thank you.
All right, on the amendment.
Mr.
on the
President,
amendment.
ask for roll call.
All right, Senators request a roll call. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 31 votes in the negative, the Senator's amendment fails. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 705 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. All right, let's go to layover calendar number 34. 34. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 825, Senator Kramer, Consumer Credit, Commercial Financing Transactions. Question is on the adoption of the committee amendments and the favorable report.
All right, question before the body is on the 5 committee amendments. The 5 committee amendments. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The 5 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 825 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. All right, let's go to layover calendar number 35. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 820, Senator Lamb, Child Abuse and Neglect, Investigations, Timeliness. Question is on the adoption of the committee amendments and the favorable report.
Chair recognizes the floor leader on the amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have an amendment.
All right. The clerk will collect the amendment and pages will distribute. Oh, apologies. Well, if we could just, so we have to adopt the current amendments, the committee amendment. Is this a committee replacement amendment, or is this an amendment to the amended
An amendment
bill?
to the existing report. I
Okay,
believe.
so let's give us just 1 second. Do we have any discussion on the committee amendments? On the committee amendments? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The 2 committee amendments are adopted. On the favorable report, any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Now we have the Senator's amendment, which we could pull up. All right, the Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you. There was just a technical error. The bill, as amended, sunsets in 5 years, and what sunset in the original bill was everything, and what sunsets under this amendment is the reporting requirement. Added to the bill was an expansion of the folks who could do some of the investigations to a clinical professional counselor, and we want to just make sure that that doesn't sunset in 5 years. So that's all this amendment does.
Mr. President.
Yes, Chair recognizes the Chair of the committee.
Sorry, there's a little bit of a technical problem here. So these were substitute amendments, and so I think we need to bring the bill back to remove the amendments and then put these on.
Right.
But then once we do that, I'd like to lay the bill over.
Why don't we do this?
We can special order it.
Why don't we take this at the moment and special order it until tomorrow?
Got it.
Because I think there's another issue that...
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
understood.
So if there's no objection, we're just going to special order the bill until tomorrow. Are there any objections? Actually, we could do it till this evening, the evening session, if there's no objections. All right, without objection, the bill and the amendment will be special ordered to the appropriate time this evening.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to, let's go to the report on education, health, environmental affairs. This is calendar report number 33. Are we ready for that one, Mr. Chairman? 33. All right, clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 221, the President, Department of the Environment Enforcement Authority, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the chair of the committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill was requested by the Attorney General of Maryland to better allow them to enforce laws, particularly regarding drinking water. They have been out of alignment for many years with other aspects of the code and the Department of the Environment. It updates and standardizes expanded authority and penalty enforcement actions that can be taken to enforce many provisions of the environmental article. It deals with drinking water, water quality laboratories, waterworks, and waste system operators. It augments the current law, which allows civil action but not administrative action. Sometimes civil action takes a long, long time. It's very cumbersome, and we want to give them as many tools as possible to do enforcement. This would add administrative, particularly. There are 2 amendments, Mr. President. First one is technical. The second one clarifies that the administrative penalty assessed by the department becomes a lien on the person's property only after it is recorded with the clerk of the circuit court, and adds language requiring the department to notify the Attorney General each time the department pursues administrative penalties for a violation. Mr. President, I would move the 2 committee amendments, favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Yes, Chair recognizes the minority whip on the amendments.
Would the floor leader yield for one question on the amendment?
Appears so. Senator may proceed.
I noticed that, thank you, Mr. President. I noticed that one amendment right at the beginning of the bill is about the department notifying the Attorney General each time there's an action for administrative penalty. Is that, you were talking about how this is conforming us to sort of, is this normal? Is that something we do in other areas?
No, that was, excuse me, that was an amendment I think that came in committee. That was, I don't think that was in the original bill.
No, it wasn't. That's what I'm saying. That's what I was asking about the amendments. Is that, why was that amendment, is that sort of standard practice for other types of administrative violations?
I think the committee felt we wanted to know how frequently it's happening. We just wanted to get a handle on this, and I think the committee added that basically because they want to know what the change from solely civil to adding administrative would do, and they felt they want to tell the Attorney General. We think the Attorney General, well, might it be duplicative because the Attorney General embedded in the department would probably know about it.
But that's, no, I just, okay.
And then we don't think it did any harm. It just affirmed that there'd be enough information when those kind of actions took place.
And overall to the bill, you're stating this is something you're doing to bring it more in line with what the Attorney General's involved in some other areas of the state, or is this something specific to?
In many other areas and departments, they have the authority to take administrative action. It so happens in drinking water they don't. And drinking water has been a major problem. Obviously, we've seen Flint, but there have been many. There was a report, I think, in January. In fact, Attorney General wrote a letter to the governor saying that the lack of staff to actually investigate drinking water facilities and complaints had been, the backlog was horrendous, 3,000, some large number. And I think he suggested 2 things, that the governor add more staff prospectively going forward so there wouldn't be a backlog, but also give the department more tools and more pathways that are not so cumbersome to enforce.
Okay. I appreciate the answers, and I definitely want us to be sure drinking water is safe. I did have some questions that were coming from some. There was a couple of questions. I just want to look over the bill a little bit. If I could lay it over, I'd like to ask to lay it over under the rule.
Senator's motion is in order. The bill and the amendments will be laid over under the rule. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 427, Senator West, Baltimore County, hunting non-game birds and mammals, favorable.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a local Baltimore County bill that repeals the requirement that a person obtain a hunting license before hunting or attempting to hunt non-game birds and mammals in Baltimore County. This bill is really a response to an issue with the amount of damage like groundhogs can do. I know on my farm at home we have that issue. They get these holes everywhere. You could turn your ankle in it. A horse or other animals could do that. This is already allowed in every other state in the or every other county in the state. This would bring Baltimore County in line with rest. There were no committee amendments, so I'd like to move for adoption of the favorable committee report.
Can't get Caddyshack out of my head. All right, the floor leaders move for the adoption of the favorable committee report. On the report, all in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 427 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 582, Senator Bailey, Natural Resources, Recreation on Private Land, Hunting, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill establishes that if a landowner directly invites or permits an individual to use their property for hunting, the invited or permitted individual impliedly consents to adhere to every law and to observe every safety precaution and practice, to take every precaution against fire, and to assume all responsibility and liability for that individual's safety and property while hunting on the landowner's real property. There are two committee amendments. The first is technical. The second amendment provides that the bill applies whether or not the landowner charges a fee to hunt on that property. I'd like to move the two amendments and for adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor Leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, Chair recognizes the senator from District 1.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the floor leader yield?
Will the floor leader yield for a question?
It's my understanding now, under the law, if you're a private property owner and someone wants to hunt on your property, they have to sign a permission slip to get on your property?
Could I yield to the bill sponsor?
Sure.
All right, let's yield to the senator from the 29th District.
That's correct, Senator.
So what's this do to that? Do they have to expand what they put in writing on the slip they sign or the card they sign?
So this is in response, direct response to the JCR report from last year, 2021. And I can read you from that. The private landowners may not want to allow hunting on their property now is due to a liability concern. Lawmakers should consider statutory change to reduce those concerns. Martinez versus Ross, the Court of Special Appeals, held that a landowner was liable despite the provisions of the Maryland Recreational Use Statute because the landowner did not open their land to the general public. This court interpretation that was the requirement for landowners to leverage the protections for recreational use statute. This was a great departure from anything that had been done in the past, and that's why we brought this forward.
So this is other things other than hunting. Could be any kind of recreation.
This just deals with hunting.
Okay, because commission I was on, some other members in here, we looked at expanding recreational opportunities on private property, but part of the problem was liability issue. So this only deals with hunting.
This bill only deals with hunting. This was brought to us by the farming community and the department as a direct result of to manage the deer herd. And this was one of the things that the landowners were very skeptical about allowing people to hunt on their property. And yes, to answer your, they do need written permission. They need to go through the hunter safety before they can get that.
Okay, thank you. Good bill. Need to protect the liability of property owner.
All right, two committee amendments. Chair recognizes the senator from Charles County on the amendments.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I have a question for the floor leader.
Will the floor leader yield? Appears so. Senator may proceed.
Yeah, so this bill is about liability. So what does the bill actually do, and what does it give, and what does it take away in terms of liability for people coming on private property and discharging a firearm?
My understanding is there was a recent court case, and that this bill is in response to that, to codify what has been done in the past.
So, okay, thank you for that, Senator. So someone coming and hunting, and so if they accidentally or otherwise cause injury to someone on the property, what under this, well, under current law, and what are the liabilities for the landowner and the visiting hunter on that property?
Sure, the hunter would be the responsible person for, and not just the landowner, it would be the hunter would be the responsible party for an accident or a misfortunate event that would occur from the hunting.
Okay, so that's for the current law or this bill?
Both.
Okay, so current law on this bill would make the hunter responsible for
basically this clarifies what the law has been. It makes it more clear and puts it more put it in that statute, makes it clarifying.
Okay, so you're saying that the landowner has no liability on the current law and this bill for injuries that happen because of for the discharge of firearm on that property.
Under current law, that was unclear, and that was really the reason for this bill.
Okay, so the clarity in this bill will give liability protection to who?
The landowner.
The landowner. So who would be liable for any injury caused by a hunter on that landowner's property?
The hunter.
The hunter. So the landowner will have absolutely no liability.
Correct.
Okay. So what if, okay, the landowner invites a busload of folks to come to his or her own property, say from church or the lodge or from wherever. They pile on. The landowner knows they have no liability. They just say, hey, go at it, my friends, go hunt. And the injury is caused to a neighboring property, a neighboring person. Who would they go to, the person injured, on the neighbor, to seek redress?
So just to clarify the first part of your question, anybody on the property would have to be a licensed hunter that goes through these hunter safety courses. So it's not like just a bunch of people are going to show up that don't have the appropriate training and certifications to be able to hunt. It's not just like some free-for-all where all these people are going to show up. That's just not going to happen.
Okay. So under this bill, does the landowner, we know this bill takes away the responsibility for any accidents that happen with invited hunters on the property. So does this bill create any requirement for the landowner to do a orientation for visitors to his or her own property to say these are the borders to the property? We have neighbors throughout the woods with little children playing in the yard. Does this bill require any type of orientation to the visitors who don't know that property to where the borders are and the safety areas and safety zones that should be there?
Senator, I want to, again,
Excuse me,
to
Senator,
yield to the...
one moment. Chair recognizes President Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask that this bill and the amendments lie over under the rule, if that's appropriate.
The motion is in order. The bill and the amendments will lay over under the rule.
Thank you.
All right, Senators, we are going to mark this calendar as unfinished and pause for a minute so that we can get to the budget. We were trying to give time for folks to be able to arrive. So we're going to just mark this as unfinished. We'll come back to it after we get through some business, so it'll stay on the docket for the day. All right, so let's move now to layover calendar number 32. The clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 290, the President, Budget Bill, Fiscal Year 2023. Question is on the adoption of the committee amendments and the favorable report.
All right, Senators, we are back again here with the budget, 112 amendments. We're going to invite the Chair of Budget and Taxation to present the amendments. We'll take these up in bulk, and so I want to make sure that we have all of the materials needed. They were distributed yesterday on Senators' desks, and with that, the Chair will recognize the Chair of Budget and Tax to present the floor report.
Thank you, Mr. President. A lot of paper. A lot of paper. All right. Let's do a budget. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, the Budget and Taxation Committee recommends 112 amendments to the budget. These are indicated on the committee reprint and in the committee report distributed on Wednesday. Recognizing the current strength of our economy, this budget provides historic levels of investments in many areas. At the same time, we recognize that increasing costs and events occurring beyond our control and beyond our borders could have an impact on our financial stability. By setting aside funding for tax relief, housing assistance, and education reform, while also leaving over $3.3 billion in cash reserves and a $570 million structural surplus. Our actions in this budget protect our priorities and ensure that we are positioning the state to respond to whatever might lie ahead. Mr. President, I would now like to turn to the committee amendments. Amendments are marked in the committee report that was made available to the members and to the public on Wednesday morning. They are also indicated in the committee reprint of the bill. I will be introducing the amendments in the committee report in groups. After describing the amendments, I will then move for each group to be adopted. I ask members to hold any additional amendments until after the committee's amendments have been considered. With your permission, Mr. President, let me now turn to the first group of amendments.
Senator may proceed.
Amendments 1 through 13 pertain to the judiciary, the Uninsured Employers Fund, the Historic St. Mary's City Commission, and the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention, Youth, and Victim Services. In the judiciary, Amendments 1 through 6 reduce and restrict funding for personnel expenses to align with the anticipated costs, add funds for the Access to Counsel and Eviction Special Fund, and request a report in the Uninsured Employees Fund. Amendment 7 restricts funds from pending a report in the Historic St. Mary's City Commission. Amendment 8 restricts funds pending a performance audit in the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention, Youth, and Victim Services. Amendments 9 and 11 and 13 restrict funds pending reports. Amendment 10 establishes requirements for Federal Victims of Crime Act awards and requires reports. Amendment 12 modifies the distribution of enhanced police aid funds. Move the adoption of the amendments 1 through 13.
Chairman has moved for the adoption of amendments 1 through 13. Any discussion? Any requests for separation? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The amendments 1 through 13 are adopted. Senator may proceed.
Amendments 14 through 21 pertain to the Maryland Institute for Emergency Medical Service Systems, the Property Tax Assessment Appeal Board, the Department of Veterans Affairs, the Department of Budget Management, and the Department of General Services. In the Maryland Institute for Emergency Medical Services System, Amendment 14 restricts funds pertaining to a report. Amendment 15 restricts funds in the Department of Veteran Affairs pending a report. In the Property Tax Assessments Appeals Board, Amendment 16 restricts funds pending a report. Amendments 17 through 19 in the Department of Budget and Management request reports on personnel issues and federal funds. In the Department of General Services, Amendment 20 restricts funds to be used for certain purposes. Amendment 21 restricts funds pending a report on State Center. Move adoption of the amendments 14 through 21.
All right, Senator has moved for the adoption of amendments 14 through 21. Any discussion or request to separate? Seeing none, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Amendments 14 through 21 are adopted. Senator may proceed.
Amendments 22 through 34 pertain to the Department of Transportation and the Department of Natural Resources. In the Maryland Department of Transportation, Amendment 22 requires notification on proposed changes to the capital program. Amendment 23 through 26 establish a position ceiling and place limits on operating grants and aid, capital projects, and transportation bonds. Amendment 27 and 28 require reports on debt and establish a non-traditional debt limit. In the Maryland Transit Administration, Amendments 29 through 31 restrict funds pending three reports. Amendment 32 in the Maryland Aviation Administration restricts funds pending a report. In the Department of Natural Resources, Amendment 33 and 34 require reports. Move adoption of amendments 22 through 34.
All right, the chairman has moved for the adoption of amendments 22 through 34. Any discussion or requests to separate the amendments? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The amendments 22 through 34 are adopted. Senator may proceed.
Amendments 35 through 52 pertain to the Maryland Department of Health. Amendments 35 through 37 restrict funds pending reports on departmental issues. In the health professional boards and commissions, Amendments 38 and 39 restrict funds pending reports on efforts to resolve repeat audit findings. In public health services, Amendment 40 and 41 request reports. In the behavioral health administration, Amendments 42 through 44 restrict funds pending a report and add annual language restricting funds for provider reimbursements to that purpose. In the Developmental Disabilities Administration, Amendments 45 and 46 request a report and restrict funding for community service providers to that purpose. In Medicaid, Amendments 47 through 48 and 52 request 3 reports. Amendments 49 through 59 restrict funds to the specific purposes they were budgeted for. Move the adoption of Amendments 35 through 52.
All right. The chairman has moved for the adoption of Amendments 35 through 52. Any discussion or request to separate? Yes, Chair recognizes the senator from District 6.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to separate Amendment 50
Amendment 50.
for an amendment.
All right, that amendment will be separated, which means before the body are Amendments 35 through 52, but not 50. All right, any discussion on those? If not, all in favor of Amendments 35 through 52, but not 50, say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Amendments 35 through 52, but not 50, are adopted. Question down before the body is Amendment 50. Discussion on Amendment 50. Chair recognizes the senator from District 6.
Thank you, Mr. President. This part of the budget and the amendment, I didn't know a lot of it until I got the full part of it, and I might have gotten out of line, but I just wanted more than anything, Mr. President, I do have an amendment for this. That's what I had, but I, again, wanted to just mention that this is something that I'm not for in this amendment. So, thank you, Mr. President.
All right, so the question's still on Amendment 50. It sounded like the senator has a subsequent amendment, is that correct?
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay, so we'll do that after we adopt the report, and we'll just make note that we have an amendment coming.
Yes.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd District.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This has to do with Medicaid abortion funding. And I have a question for the chairman, if I could.
Senator may to the subcommittee chairperson. Senator may proceed.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Senator, we're going to have a robust discussion of abortion over the next few weeks. We have some important bills coming. The question in the budget is, for the Medicaid abortion, is there any limitation on the number of weeks that are allowed, or can the money be used for the abortion at any time during the 9 months of pregnancy?
First of all, I guess I just want clarification, Mr. President. Are we still on amendment number 50, or are we on the overall?
We're on the Amendment 50.
Okay.
Amendment 50.
My understanding is that there is no restriction in this portion of the budget.
Thank you, Senator. That's my understanding also. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I'm sorry, Senator, I forgot. When the good senator mentioned Amendment 50, is that the right amendment, or is it 49? They're next to each other. It can be confusing.
This was the issue. I think 50 has to do with the Children's Health Program.
And we're focused on that abortion issue, Mr. President.
Right. That so.
Which is fine to let it go through. He just wanted to
We have a
highlight
subsequent
it.
amendment.
We're
Understood.
highlighting it.
All right. So on Amendment 50. All right.
Amendment 50 is fine.
Okay.
Amendment 49 is what the future amendment will be
For
about.
a subsequent introduction of an amendment.
And thank you for allowing me to ask that clarifying question.
Thank you,
Mr.
Senator.
President.
All right, so the question before the body is Amendment 50. This is on the Children's Health Program. Are there all in favor of the amendment, or any discussion on the amendment? If not, all in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Amendment 50 is adopted. We'll keep going through the amendments, and then we'll take up the report on the budget, and then we'll take up amendments, subsequent amendments to be introduced. So, Senator may proceed on the amendments following Amendment 52.
Thank you, Mr. President. Amendments 53 through 64 pertain to the Department of Human Services and the Department of Labor and the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. In the Department of Human Services, Amendment 53 restricts funds for the Maryland Legal Services Program to that purpose. Amendment 54 requests a report. Amendments 55 and 56 restricts funds for foster care, maintenance payments, and child welfare services to those purposes only. In the Department of Labor, Amendment 57 requests a report. Amendment 58 restricts federal funds to be used for oversight activities. In the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, Amendment 59 and 60 and 63 restricts funds for certain purposes. Amendment 61, 62, and 64 request reports. Move adoption of the amendments 53 through 64.
All right, the chairman has moved for the adoption of amendments 53 through 64. Any discussion on these amendments or requests for separation? If not, all in favor of the amendments, please say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The amendments 53 through 64 are adopted. Senator may proceed.
Amendments 65 through 79 pertain to the Maryland State Department of Education and the University System of Maryland and the Maryland Higher Education Commission. In the Maryland State Department of Education, Amendments 65 and 66 request reports. Amendments 67 through 72 add annual language pertaining to non-public education aid and reduce funds for the new program due to the availability of federal funds. In the Interagency Committee on School Construction, Amendments 73 through 75 restrict funds pending reports and add language specifying requirements for non-public school safety grants. For the University of Maryland, Baltimore campus, Amendments 57 restricts funds for a grant. In the Maryland Higher Education Commission, Amendment 77 restricts funds pending a report. Amendment 78 adds language expressing intent related to the name of the scholarship fund, and Amendment 79 is technical. Move adoption of amendments 65 through 79.
Chairman has moved for the adoption of amendments 65 through 79. Are there any discussion or requests to separate? Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs on the amendments.
Thank you very much. Just the senator from District 17. I'd like to separate amendments number 69, 70, and 71, please. Thank you.
Senator, just to clarify, that's 69,
70,
70
and 71.
as a single, as a group, Senator, or as each individually?
That's just fine, just for purpose of conversation.
All right, so let's take up, so currently we are on amendments 65 through 79, but for 69, 70, and 71. On the prior amendments, any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye, opposed nay. The ayes have it. The amendments 65 through 79, but not 69, 70, and 71 are adopted. Amendments 69, 70, and 71 are now before the body. Chair recognizes the senator from District 17 on those three amendments.
I appreciate that, Mr. President. First off, congratulations to colleagues for all the hard work, and Mr. Chairman, thank you for your work on this budget in what is always challenging and the fundamental basis of our state's policy. I continue to be disappointed in allocating $10 million in taxpayer money to go to our private and parochial schools. And I have a question for the chair. On pages 149, 151, and 152, in 3 instances, there is good language about anti-discrimination in terms of student admission, retention, or expulsion. Based on, and that there should not be discrimination based on race, color, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression. Could you just clarify 2 things for me? First, it appears that that covers students but not staff or faculty. Is that correct?
So Chairman, seek to yield to
the subcommittee
chair.
I don't think that it's written in the handbook that it's for teachers and staff. I don't know that for sure, but I think it's just for, that's the student handbook.
So my concern, as it is every year, is that a faculty or staff member could be fired or not hired because of their faith, because of their race, because of their sexual orientation, and I'm disappointed in that. My second question is there is legislation that is existing currently in the Judicial Proceedings Committee. Is there anything, if we pass this budget as is there anything that precludes the Judicial Proceedings Committee and this body, as well as the House, obviously, from passing legislation that would strengthen and expand that discrimination protection?
I'm not aware of what is in the Judicial Proceedings Committee, so.
Do we want to yield to the chair of Judicial Proceedings? All right, let's yield.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, we do have a bill before us that is on point, and I'm unaware of any obstacle to our ability to pass if this budget language goes into place.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. Question before the body remains amendments 69, 70, and 71. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Amendments 69, 70, and 71 are now adopted. We will now move forward to Amendment 80. Senator may proceed and explain the amendments.
Thank you, Mr. President. Amendments 80 through 89 pertain to the Department of Housing and Community Development, the Department of Commerce, the Department of Environment, the Department of Juvenile Services, and the State Reserve Fund and Deficiency Appropriations. In the Department of Housing and Community Development, Amendment 80 restricts funds to be used for certain projects. In the Department of Commerce, Amendment 81 restricts tourism funding to be used for certain grants. In the Department of Environment, Amendment 82 requires proper budgeting of personnel expenditures in the Department of Juvenile Services. Amendment 83 restricts funds pending a report. In the State Reserve Fund, Amendment 84 restricts funds for legislative priorities. Amendment 85 and 88 require the Maryland Department of Health deficiency appropriation be used for certain purposes. Amendment 89, 86, 87, and 89 delete double budgeted federal funds. Move the adoption of the amendments 80 through 89.
Chairman's move for the adoption of amendments 80 through 89. Any discussion or request to separate? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The amendments 80 through 89 are now adopted. Senator may proceed.
Amendments 90 through 112 pertain to the back of the bill sections and supplemental budget number 1. Amendment 90 and 91 amend language to limit the amount that can be placed in the contingency reserve and prohibit certain transfers. Amendment 92 and 93 add annual language concerning forecasts and across-the-board reductions. Amendment 94 and 95 pertain to federal funds. Amendment 96 and 97 require submission of organizational charts and reports on interagency agreements. Amendment 98 defines the budget amendment process. Amendment 99, 100, 104 add reporting requirements. Amendments 101 through 103 establish reporting and other requirements related to personnel. Amendments 105 through 108 restrict funds pending reports. Amendment 109 is technical. The supplemental budget number 1, Amendment 110 restricts funds pending the submission of regulations. Amendments 111 and 112 restrict funds for the helicopter maintenance to that purpose. Move amendments 90 through 112. Well, 112.
All right, the chairman's moved amendments 90 through 112. Any discussion or request to separate? If not, all in favor of amendments 90 through 112 say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Amendments 90 through 112 are now adopted. Question now before the body is the amended, Mr. Chairman, that was all of the amendments, correct? So before the body is the adoption of the favorable committee report as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. I believe we have amendments now to the bill. Chair recognizes Senator from District 6.
I have an amendment, Mr. President.
All right, the clerk will collect the senator's amendment. Pages will distribute. Just give us one moment. All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our budget and what we do with the budget, we do great things. We help hospitals. We help our communities and schools. We help private entities. We help and we do places where we know they need more help, like bridges, overpasses. We help the homeless. We help those that we know they're in a place where we want to give a helping hand. We have shown compassion. We have done many things in the Senate, and I believe we continue to do that, and I commend that in many ways. But there's some things that in my heart that I don't believe we should be doing. Just to let you know, in U.S. policy, there's the Hyde Amendment, which is a federal amendment. And in legislation, the provision borrows the use of federal funds to pay for abortions except for the life of the woman, of the pregnancy, and from the one thing that they don't want to fund, of course, is if there's rape or incest. In this budget, we fund at times abortions where I believe they're not necessary. And my taxes, and I believe many people here, believe that their taxes should not be used for that place. And I believe that really describes that amendment. And I would love for everybody to be a part of this amendment and approve this amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, Senator moves the amendment. Chair recognizes the floor leader who yields to the subcommittee chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I rise to ask your opposition to this amendment. In taking up the amendment and laying it next to the budget bill that we have before us, I want to point out a couple of things that I think will provide some clarification. This amendment speaks to the specific provision in the budget bill that speaks to a woman's ability to have physician-certified approval in writing based on the provider's professional judgment that there is medical evidence that continuation of the pregnancy is creating a serious effect on the woman's present mental health, and if carried to term, there is substantial risk of serious, long-lasting effects on the woman's future mental health. And so that is the provision of the budget bill that this amendment is written to. And I would just say, colleagues, I ask you to oppose this amendment. This language has been a part of the budget bill since 1979. It was introduced. This was not a committee amendment. And I would suggest that the state has invested in mental health and behavioral health of our citizens, particularly at this time. So I'd ask you to vote red. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd District on the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And for the floor leader, very well said. We have invested in mental health services. It's extremely important because this is not to be taken lightly. So with your indulgence, Mr. President, I have some extended remarks. From the budget bill, the general fund appropriation provided that no part of this general fund appropriation may be paid to any physician or surgeon or any hospital, clinic, or other medical facilities for or in conjunction with the performance of any abortion except under the certification of a physician or surgeon based on his or her professional judgment that the procedure is necessary, provided one of approximately 5 conditions are met. And I want to thank the floor leader for emphasizing that. This is not to be taken lightly. It's a very important issue. The first condition is where continuation of the pregnancy is likely to result in the death of a woman. And of course, that is one of those philosophical decisions that people's heart break over this thing. Do we save the mom? Do we save the baby? In my approach to this, we try to do both. It's a very, very difficult issue, and we have to recognize that. Number 2, where the woman is the victim of rape, sexual offense, or incest that has been reported to a law enforcement agency or to a public health and social agency. Again, the woman has been victimized. It's been documented in the public record, even though it may be protected. Again, a very strong, compelling reason. Number 3, where it is ascertained by the physician with a reasonable degree of medical certainty that the fetus is affected by genetic defect or serious deformity or abnormality, or where it can be asserted by the physician with a reasonable degree of medical certainty that termination of the pregnancy is medically necessary because there is substantial risk that continuation of the pregnancy could have a serious and adverse effect on the woman's present or future physical health. Just the other day, Mr. President, I got a wonderful little gift in my office from the Down Syndrome Association. I have a nephew who has Down syndrome. There is a lot of discussion about whether or not that is a condition which should allow a couple to decide to have an abortion. And very difficult decisions, but my nephew's a rock star. The next is, before an abortion can be performed on the grounds of mental health, and this is where we want to focus our attention, because this is where most of our tax dollars are going, to the mental health provision. Before an abortion can be performed on the grounds of mental health, there must be certification in writing by a physician or surgeon that in his or her professional judgment there exists medical evidence that continuation of the pregnancy is creating a serious effect on the woman's present mental health, and if carried to term, there would be substantial risk of a serious long-term lasting effect on the woman's future mental health. I know I have a great respect for our medical field, our surgeons, but this is asking for mental health evaluation, and I think there's a gap in the law in this area. So how does this wording come to actual in-the-field statistics? Mr. President, in one of our official Maryland executive budget summaries, 2019, it looked back for fiscal 2018. And physicians have certified that of the 9,700, almost 10,000 abortions that we paid for, there were the physicians or surgeons indicated there were no women the life of the woman was endangered. It's an important part of the law, but no one has ever taken advantage of that identification. Likely to result in the death of a woman, a very important issue that we're not dismissing lightly. In fiscal year 2018, there were no women who had an abortion because the abortion was likely to result in the death of a woman. Now, the next reason, substantial risk that continuation of the pregnancy could have a serious and adverse effect on the woman's present or physical health. My mom and my mother-in-law had 10, 11, and 12-pound babies. Of course, they were always at risk for high blood pressure, for other complications from having very large babies. And of the almost 10,000 abortions, 78 were documented to have effect on the woman's present or physical health. Now here's where we get to this mental health thing, Mr. President. Again, love our doctors, love our surgeons, but I don't know if they're eminently qualified like others in the mental health field to make this evaluation. Of the almost 10,000 abortions that we paid for with our tax dollars, 9,700 were for mental health. And I understand when my wife got pregnant the first time and we weren't married, we had a lot of pressure. We had a lot of hard decisions to make. Abortion was legal at that time. We had a lot of decisions to make. We had a lot of mental stress. Friends saying do one thing, friends saying do another, and at the end of the day, the couple has to sit down and make a very hard decision. Rachel just turned 48. God bless her. God bless my wife. And then we go down to within a reasonable degree of medical certainty that the fetus is affected by genetic defect, Down syndrome, or any of these other things. Out of 10,000, 32 women. And here's the interesting thing that I think a lot of us are always concerned about this: victims of rape, sexual offense, and incest. I mean, that's a real reason to consider an abortion, whether it's paid by the state or by someone else. Zero. So Mr. President, the reason I bring these statistics up is the life of a woman endangered, rape, sexual offense, and incest, zero. And we're focusing on the mental health. It's an interesting website. There's a Bethesda abortion clinic that does late-term abortions, which are the most difficult, most expensive. And they've indicated that 1/3 of the women in the United States have had an abortion. This is a procedure which, like the floor leader said, has been accepted for many decades. And but it also affects 1/3 of the men who might have been involved with these issues. I'd like to remind the body, in 1992, there was a referendum on the ballot. And overwhelmingly, the citizens of Maryland said yes, that this law was okay. Education and science has caught up with us. And I would say if we were making our decisions from the information in the 80s and the early 90s, there may still be some doubts. When does life begin? When are children viable? And what we're asking with this amendment is to recognize that there is a strong vocal minority that are very offended, as my good friend from Baltimore County mentioned, that we're using our state tax dollars for this issue. We have, on several occasions in the past few weeks, heard the term might makes right, where someone who has the ability to impose themselves on the rest of the country or the world does it. I look at this issue in many ways in this regard, and let me tell you what I mean by that. For 6 years, my wife was a sonographer at a pregnancy clinic. She had the joyful opportunity to show a woman that her fetus at 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks had a strong, steady heartbeat. At about 12 to 20 weeks, you could actually see the baby moving around in the womb. My wife called it was like on a trampoline, bouncing from left side to side. You women who've carried children might understand that feeling. We have spent millions of dollars in Maryland and all across the United States on NICU units in our hospitals. When a child is born and the parents are happy, but it weighs 2 pounds or 3 pounds, and it has undeveloped lungs or other issues, we will bend over backwards and spend anything necessary to allow that child to thrive until they can be on their own and sent home. And my investigation oftentimes shows that those preemies are oftentimes ready to go home when they would have been 9 months in the womb, because the body has finally matured enough. And what a great opportunity, what a great joy for a mom to bring her child back to her own home. So we have science that shows the heartbeat begins early. We have documented thousands of case studies every year in Maryland for children 22 to 24 weeks of gestation who can survive. Viability. So this amendment, as well as the discussion, we're going to have the same discussion in a few weeks, I presume, is whether or not a viable child should be allowed to be terminated. And my appeal is the science, the public awareness has risen to the point where we have to challenge our traditional thinking. We might have another opportunity if the referendum passes for us to test those waters again as a body. But I think it's a matter of education. And just as in closing remarks to confirm what the good floor leader said, there is a Dr. Carhart in Bethesda who advertises, bring me yourself at 27 So I believe the term is 40 weeks of pregnancy, and we will help abort your child, paid for by the taxpayers in the state of Maryland. Mr. President, I strongly support the amendment. It would ask all of us to take a deep, hard look at this. This is an important issue. Information has changed, and would ask that we vote favorably on this amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Senator Chair recognizes the senator from District 10.
Colleagues, I would ask you, in spite of the strong feelings of the maker of the amendment, to resist. In 1971, when my husband and I were students, grad students at Purdue University, we had 3 kids, and one of our best friends in student housing with us and her husband had a little boy. She began to have a number of serious medical symptoms and went several times to the student health center, which was a part of what you paid for with your tuition. And after having had several x-rays of various organs, they discovered she was pregnant, but that the fetus was not in the uterus, it was in the fallopian tube. Well, by then there were 2 concerns. One, that all of those x-rays, even if the baby had been in the uterus, would probably have caused great genetic defects and maybe other things. But because the fetus was in the fallopian tube and not in the uterus, it was going to rupture, and both the mother and that fetus would not survive. Now, you might say that's unique. There are all kinds of unique medical problems that people have, and it's their business. In the first place, we don't need to have members of our jurisdictions report to the governor, to the General Assembly, or to anybody about their various health conditions and why they seek the treatment which is legal in Maryland, which they seek. I would just say that we don't know other people's needs, their concerns, and they don't all have my perspective or your perspective on what health care decisions are important for them and what they need to do, and especially in a case like this when life of the fetus and the mother were in jeopardy. I took care of the little boy they had because they had to go several states away. They didn't have much time when they realized that life itself was on the line for both mother and for the fetus. They had to go drive to New York State. I think they went to Brooklyn in order to find care so that the mother could survive, since it was going to be impossible for both the mother and the fetus to do so. And they didn't have much time, which is one of the reasons why many of us are concerned about the need for abortion to be as available as it is in the law for people who might actually have to come here, given what is going on in our nation this year, and even the Supreme Court sitting back, allowing states to take away the right for people to have health care, which as adults they need. I won't say more, but before we go around judging everybody else, and we shouldn't be in their business in the first place, other adults have the right to seek health care, to seek it under their own terms and under the conditions of the law. We're in a state where abortion is legal, and if people need it as a medical procedure, and if they are poor enough to need to be on using Medicaid, and many of us know relatives, and we all have constituents who need Medicaid. So let's stop being, we all can have our relationship to the omnipotent. We all have the right to see life our way. We all have the right for privacy for our health care conditions and whatever it is we go to a doctor to seek help for. Some people are victims of incest and rape. And I'm sitting here listening while people talk about that as something to work around. It's the business of the poor, traumatized person who has to go through that situation. And I think about a 10 or an 11-year-old child, and I've met a couple in my district who were grossly traumatized by having been a victim of rape, and where abortion was needing to be considered. Think of a 10 or an 11-year-old child. You've already been violated in the worst possible way. Think of what it would just do to the mind of a child trying to just survive as a human being and to try to live life or to live it fully when you've gone through that. And then to find that your little 10 or 11-year-old body is going to go through premature pregnancy when you're nothing but a child yourself. You've been violated in the worst possible way. And then to have people wanting to be in your business and to say what the government ought to do about addressing your needs, which are your personal and your private needs. And just think, we all either have children or relatives with children. Think of a 10 or an 11-year-old child going through that. And we don't need the state of Maryland to decide what ought to be medically available treatment in that case. If the child and those advising the child and the parents or guardians make one decision or another decision, that child's going to suffer for life. And we don't need to make their problems worse by our sitting here in righteous indignation deciding for other people whose conditions we will never know what medical treatment is available, should be available, and is right or wrong for them. Colleagues, we ought to all be humble. Pray to the God that you believe in. I'll pray to mine. For yourself. And we don't need to address all of the protocols and the health treatments that are right or wrong for anyone else. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. All right, on the amendment, Chair recognizes Senator from District 4 on the amendment.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just want to get back to what the amendment does. The amendment does not affect abortion, its availability in any circumstance. The amendment does not, it only talks about taxpayer funding of abortion, who pays for it. It does not talk about funding of abortion, as was references in cases of life of the mother. It does not affect abortion or talk about abortion in cases of incest or rape. It does not talk about abortion in cases of genetic deformities. The amendment that the gentleman from Baltimore County offered only deals with taxpayer funding in issues where the doctor is certifying it is, quote, needed. His amendment would put us in line with the Hyde Amendment, saying the state of Maryland and taxpayers will fund abortion in cases of life of the mother, rape, and incest. It does not affect many of the other things that were talked about. And as far as why that's important, you can pray to whatever God you like, as was mentioned before, but there should be a respect for the beliefs and the religious freedoms of others, and that taxpayers should not be forced to fund elective abortions in this state. And this would put us with the Hyde Amendment and other states. So I'd be voting for the amendment. Thank you very much, and I ask for a roll call.
All right, on the amendment, Chair recognizes Senator from the 34th District.
Yeah, colleagues, I know that we talk about this matter every year. I had some sort of personal experiences with this, which sort of trouble me on where we're going with this issue. I have 5 children, so I'll keep some anonymity here. One of the 5 who's married, the mother of the child, she came up with a scan that showed that the child had signs of spina bifida. And she was advised strongly by a series of doctors to, you got to abort, you got to abort, you got to abort. A number of doctors. She actually finally went to a hospital out of state with specialists in this area who really took the time to look. And look, at this point, I have a beautiful granddaughter who, while she did require surgery at birth, is the most beautiful little child you can imagine. Fun-loving. She'll get through life just fine. But it just troubles me that where we are right now with how we've pushed this, that a young mom who is struggling because of the, I mean, look, there's a financial incentive here for the medical industry. A child, no matter how minor the condition is a whole lot cheaper to abort. That's the incentive. That is the financial incentive right now. If your child is not 100% perfect, abort. And you know, for young people facing this, as they just hear this onslaught, it's becomes sort of sad, because the solution, the consideration is no longer a moral one or even a personal emotional one. It's becoming dominated by the dollars. What makes sense from a dollar standpoint? I find that really sad that that's where we are right now. And so I support the amendment simply because I want the dollars out of it. I want the decisions made, and unfortunately, for good or for bad, I don't know, the medical institutions in this country have become businesses. It's just happened, and no finger pointing there, but it is the reality, and they're businesses, and everything is the bottom line. And I think that this is just one more. Without this amendment, we're just one more step towards relegating these issues to financial as opposed to other considerations that people might want to feel. So I do support the amendment. Thank you.
All right, on the amendment, are there any senators who have not yet spoken who wish to speak? If not, Chair recognizes the maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree with the previous senator, what he said, because I think the problem that we've had and what we have not talked about more than anything is adoption. That we should make an incentive for people to adopt. That we should find a way where we don't have to continuously finance things that, because people say, I believe in one thing and believe in another. One thing I do believe in is life. Life is precious in the eyes of God. Life is precious in the eyes of every person in this place. Life is precious. And we have to always remember that God gives life, and we don't. And if we see that way, I think our heart and our minds would say and think the right way. And that's why this amendment is very fitting. And everything is covered in this amendment as it is covered in the budget. And I think it would speak for itself if we would vote for this amendment and do the right thing. And maybe find a way where we can incentivize people to adopt. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment, Chair recognizes the Senator from the 38th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also rise in support of the amendment. And as the senator from Frederick County clarified, that the amendment, the situations that were discussed earlier in this conversation about life of the mother in cases of rape and incest, that it doesn't apply here. That what we're talking about is making sure that our taxpayer funds aren't used for abortion. And that is something when we know this is an emotional issue, but when you talk about this with rank and file constituents, they don't want to see their taxpayer dollars used for this purpose. So for that reason, I support the amendment.
All right, on the amendment, any further discussion? If Senator requested a roll call on the amendment, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 29 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 290 is hereby ordered printed for third reader. Thank you to the Budget and Taxation Committee. That was a lot of work. Still a lot of work left to do. One more stage, but a A long journey ahead. All right. Let's see, what time are we looking at? All right, we are going to do a little bit more work. We're going to probably try and go until about probably 1, so committees are probably thinking 1:30ish, and then we'll come back this evening. So we have a lot of work backed up, so just keep that in mind. If we could do if we could ring the bells and do a quorum call. We've got one bill that we got to get moving over to the other chamber. If we could do a quorum call before third reading calendar.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their presence? Perfect timing. The clerk will take the call. With 47 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. We'll go to third reading calendar number 42. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 1010, the President, motor fuel taxes, tax-free period. This is an emergency bill.
All right, Senator, Senate Bill 1010 is on third reading for final passage. This is an emergency bill. Any discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 1010, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. All right, let's go to layover calendar. This is number 33. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 275, Senator Hayes, Labor and Employment, Family and Medical Leave Insurance Program Establishment, Time to Care Act of 2022. Questions on the adoption of the committee amendments and the favorable report.
All right, Senators, the question before the body is on the 6 committee amendments, Any discussion on those amendments? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The 6 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, Chair recognizes the Senator from the 36th District on the report.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Could the floor leader yield for a few questions, please?
The floor leader yield. Senator
Yes,
may
sir.
proceed.
Thank you very much. It's another brand new program that General Assembly feels that they need to insert themselves in employee-employer relationships. A few years ago, we passed paid sick leave. How is this different for that?
Well, many differences. First of all, this is designed for longer, more serious situations. That particular piece of legislation dealt with 15 employees or under. We had cutoffs. But more to the point, this deals with serious conditions, long-term situations, whether it's cancer, birth of a child, and it's contemplated to deal with situations not contemplated by the 40 hours of leave that was in that particular piece of legislation. I think completely different kinds of legislation designed for very different kinds of scenarios.
Okay, so there's also a federal FMLA. How does this differ from that?
Well, in many ways. So the FMLA only deals with 50 employees or more. This is designed to apply to all employees in the state of Maryland. That is unpaid. This is a wage replacement program, kind of similar to like unemployment insurance. We're including in this wage replacement insurance program some family members not included in FMLA, like grandparents, for example, or grandchildren, which is excluded. But fundamentally, that is 50 employees or more. And why that's important, Mr. President, is when you only include employers who are 50 employees or more, you're excluding about 26% of the entire workforce. We're trying to cover that here. We're trying to apply to all employees, not just the folks working for the big companies. And it's unpaid.
So this is a much more expansive program that is paid for, but contributions are made from both the employee and the employer.
That's correct.
Okay. How is this program administered?
By the Department of Labor. We really made a specific point to remove as much burden as possible from the businesses. So the Secretary of Labor, the Department of Labor, will be responsible for administering it. Now, I will say we're silent as to, at some future point, perhaps a third-party administrator could do it. That'll be up to the Department of Labor. It doesn't preclude that as being a possibility down the road. And the other thing, I have to make this point, Mr. President, just to be clear, because you may get emails about this program. This bill, this particular legislation, the first time anybody will be able to file a claim with the Department of Labor to get benefits will be January 2025. This is not happening next week. It's not happening a year from now. So contributions will start in October of 2023, and the first claims will be January of 2025. And in the meantime, we're going to have actuarial studies. We're going to have a lot of stuff to make sure that the program works. Regulations, Labor Secretary is going to have to do all that. So I just want to put some context. Again, it's going to be a few years before anybody's actually making a claim for benefits under this program.
A few years before claims are realized, but contributions are going to be made much earlier. In fact, the Department of Labor says that this new tax will take about $1.5 billion out of the pockets of employees, employers.
Okay, you call it a tax. This is an insurance program. Okay, just to be clear, you pay in, the employer pays in, and if, just similar to how you would deal with insurance, if you use it, you can tap it. So I think it's not a tax at all. It's part of an insurance plan that 10 other states have started, and it's working. And to your point, yes, in order for the January 2025 program to get going, it has to actually have money in it. So the contributions will start in October of 2023. And Mr. President, I would also add, the bill as introduced started this earlier. We pushed it back significantly in direct response to concerns raised by the business community. In fact, we did a number of other things in direct response to the business community. This is, you know, we're out of whack with the rest of the country, the world, when it comes to leave policies. COVID has exacerbated that. States are moving in this direction, but having said that, we're trying to strike a balance. And that balance is we don't want to be overburdening the business that are impacted here. And so several ways, we're having the Labor Department administer it. We're pushing the effective dates off significantly. The contribution rates themselves came in at 50-50. And as you well know, as a member of the Finance Committee, it's down to 25%. So we've, I think, crafted a very balanced piece of legislation here. It's very popular. 88% of the folks in Maryland under the last poll want some program like this. And so, but it's a balancing act. We're trying to strike that balance. But yes, October 2023, that 25-75 split will start, and then in January of 2025, claims will be allowed to be submitted to the Department of Labor.
Okay, so before the taxes are taking out of individuals' paychecks.
Contribution. Yes, contributions.
And
25% from
right.
from the employer. Yeah, that contribution, not a tax. Contribution to the insurance program.
Let me ask: when you talk about contribution, is this optional?
It's a statewide program. I mean, we want all employees to benefit.
Contributions seem to be more optional. Taxes seem to be more mandated. That's why I was using the phrase taxes.
It's an actually, the phraseology is assessment, to be perfect. So we're accurate. Assessment is the actual language.
So employees will see an assessment on their paychecks. Is what you're saying?
Correct. Okay. And I think it's important, Mr. President, when we talk about this contribution. So for the average worker today in the state of Maryland, let's say making $52,000 a year, which is the average weekly salary under the current, we're talking $5 per week. So when the gentleman references this big assessment, we are talking about something to the tune for the average $52,000. And I have a chart, if anybody wants to know how it breaks out, along the $5 and some amount per week for an insurance package that if when they get cancer or when they have a birth of a child, they can tap.
So about a gallon of gas every week, right?
You know, $5.83 to be exact if you make
For
$52,000 a year. Yes.
Ask a little bit more because you talked about the time frames on when this program will start taking the taxes out of people's paychecks.
The assessment.
Prior to that occurring, the Department of Labor will need to get this program up and running.
Correct.
Their letter to the committee stated that they would need 400 new employees to manage the program at a cost of $45 million and another $50 million to contract with a vendor to create an IT system such as the one that we saw in the unemployment insurance, the Beacon program. Those startup costs come from where?
So the way it's envisioned is that this would be a loan from the Labor Department. Let me just clarify. Okay, general fund. Okay, general fund, and general fund.
So
I'm told general fund now. Okay.
The taxpayers of Maryland will pay once again for this. So again, you talked about collections beginning in.
Well, can I just clarify? But I also think there is some language about an intent that this could be reimbursed later back to the general fund from contributions later when the program's up and running. I think that is sort of part of the vision here, candidly.
Well, getting to that, I was just going to ask, do the operational cost for administering this fund come out of the contributions?
Well, we haven't started yet. What do you? So there is no program yet. We haven't passed a bill.
Is there? I mean, we've set up a number of guidelines. I think we were very specific on a number of things, talking about the weeks that can be taken off, the reasons, who the family members are. We've even mentioned that this new payroll tax would be 0.75%. So are we saying we haven't determined on how this, how the funds would be used to operate this?
Okay, the contributions started again October 2023. Eventually, that number will be determined. It's not in this legislation, but eventually there will be a determination, and it will be paid. The administrative costs would come out of that pot. Yes.
So the administrative costs will come off.
Yes.
I didn't see that in the bill, and I know we discussed that in the Finance Committee. It sounds like that still is not certain.
I think it's actually in the bill. Council confirms that there is actually language in the bill, and if you need a page number or code section, it's in the bill, and we're looking to find you a specific page number. So yes, it's administrative costs will come out of the fund. Yes.
Okay. I haven't seen that, but if you could let us know where that is, I'd appreciate that. You referred to this. You referred to the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund as well as a similar type program. Obviously, that is based on actuarial studies. This seems to already have the guidelines that we know how much we're going to collect based on the salary of the employee and the 0.75%.
Actually, that's not accurate. So if you look at the bill, we're actually in October of this year, on page 13, page 13 was the administrative cost question you had. But October this year, we're actually going to have an actuarial study between October 1 and January 1, and that long before anybody's doing anything, that study will come back January, ahead of the next session, to make sure that what we've put into this bill provides adequate funds. But in addition, every single year thereafter in September, there will be a determination. Okay, page 13, lines 17 and 18. Yeah, I think. Yeah, okay, back to page 13, lines 17, 18 with the initial costs of putting the program. But back to the actuarial study. So we've tried to be really, really specific here. Actuarial study June of 2022. Every year thereafter, there's going to be an analysis, actuarial analysis, to make sure that that rate shared 25% by the employer, 75% by the employee, is actuarially sound. So there's a lot in here by way of regulations, actuarial studies, long before we get to October 2023 and long before we get to January of 2025 when the first claims can come in.
I think we need to check those dates again. What I saw is the bill goes into effect June 1st and the actuarial studies are due to the General Assembly on October 1st.
Okay, look at
That's
the
4 months. Is that right? Section 3?
what's it? What was your repeat the question? Just want to make sure I got.
We're talking about when the actuarial studies are going to be done. And I see in section 4 of the bill that on or before October 1, 2022.
Right, okay, October 1 of 2022 is when the first actuarial study, you're talking section 3 in the
Department
back?
of Labor is going to conduct this study in 4 months?
Well, 4 months, October 1 of 2022, come back January 2023, yes. And then, you know, again, nothing's yet happened, and we'll have 2023 session, and a lot of time before January of 2025, definitely before October of 2023, we'll have actuarial studies from the Department of Labor.
So there's a reference that some other states have already looked at this plan.
I should just, to be clear, and that's on page 29, but the bill takes effect June 1, 2022, specifically so we'll have the time to do the, it's section 4, page 29, about the actuarial study that will be done October 1, 2022, due back to us, you're right, in
4 months.
4 months.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I assume that the Department of Labor has commented that that type of study could be completed in such a short period of time?
Well, they didn't come in and say they couldn't. We didn't have any testimony to the contrary.
All right.
I'm sure they're quite capable of sending us a letter of concern if that was the case.
I think this letter was pretty much considered a letter of concern, what they testified for. You mentioned other states have tried to do this
10.
as well. Most recently, Oregon is talking about its biggest challenges of processing employer equivalent plan applications. Does this bill allow for a private employer plan that meets or exceeds the plan goals?
Yes, so that's in the bill. If a employer has a private plan that's equal or equivalent to what's provided here, that'll be good. They won't be then obliged to participate. So the answer is yes.
And so Oregon states that they're having several challenges trying to do that. Another state that is generally talked about in this chamber is the state of Washington. And they've implemented somewhere as well too. They seem to be talking about how they're struggling with the fund solvency.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
They just recently had to backfill the program with $350 million from the general fund. What's preventing that from happening
here? Mr. President, because the critics cite to the state of Washington, there's several things you need to know here. First of all, the Washington State program started when? In January of 2020. What happened in March of 2020? Something happened, and sharp increase in the need for leave. Premium collections dropped dramatically. No one could have predicted, obviously, in the early months of COVID what happened, but their premium rate that you mentioned, 0.7, was set originally extraordinarily low. And here's actually maybe the most important point. They exempted businesses under 50 employees from contributing to the fund, something we're not doing here. So the pool of money was just not right. So one of the reasons we're including everybody and not the Washington model or the FMLA model is this exemption for fewer than 50 employees does not generate the kind of money. So you put all that together, the 50 employee situation, the COVID, the program starting in January of 2020, a huge jump up in claims. Yes, of course they had a problem. I would have been shocked if they didn't run into a problem.
Right. So
none of which applies to this program.
So I know our program was based off of theirs, and obviously they guessed wrong in how much they should charge employees and employers to participate in this plan. We're guessing that it's going to take 0.75% of employee wages. How did that guesstimate occur?
0.75, exactly.
I think that's a split, Senator, right?
No.
No.
Oh, yeah, okay. No, the .75 there is the rate that's then split 75-25. We had there was a consultant hired by the state of Maryland to do the. Okay, who had worked in these several other states to advise us. Again, that's subject to change each and every year as more actuarial analysis is done. So this is where we'll start based on this expert consultant that worked in the 8 or 9 other states, and starting with this actuarial study that we're going to do in October 1st to try to nail this before it gets going in a year. But I do want to just again say the Washington model is of very little use here because of the timing when that program started, and more importantly that 50. Yeah, it's, and by the way, the .75, which is the rate that we're starting, that is the cap. That's the max. So we may not end up having to use that number. So that, just to be clear, that's not the rate that we're going to charge. It's the max, and it's going to be determined or adjusted accordingly based on the various actuarial studies that we're going to do between now and down the road when this program kicks in.
Okay, well, that's good. So it could be less than a $1.6 billion tax.
No, assessment for insurance for cancer, birth of a child, and serious health conditions for $5 assessment per week.
When we talk about these types of programs like paid sick leave and things of that nature, we hear mainly from the advocates. We don't necessarily hear from employees that are looking for these types of programs. Remember paid sick leave, we came in, what did employees want? They're more interested in wages, they're more interested in flexible schedule, they're more interested in health insurance. But we get advocacy groups that come in and say, no, 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 paid sick leave is very important to you, you need to get that. Employees came back and they said, well, we're already getting that. We're getting paid time off, we're getting what we need in order to accommodate this. I don't recall a whole lot of employees coming in and saying that this was critical to them as a benefit to be employed somewhere.
Well, okay, I mean, you know, these are big policy calls that the state has made, and we did have groups, many groups who represent employees and workers. I mean, those folks are busy working, actually. I think maybe one of the problems they're not rushing down to Annapolis in the middle of COVID is they have jobs, but we obviously had a lot of organizations who represent those workers weighed in very strongly. And as I say, the polling on this is like 90%. So if you've got some contrary data that we're doing something that's unpopular in the state, you can obviously vote no, but I would strongly suggest this is good public policy.
When we consider these types of policies that disrupt employee-employer relationships, do we take into
Can I just add one thing? I do. Okay. This was a little factoid. We are apparently the only nation, major nation in the world, without any kind of paid family leave program like this. I just, you know, kind of back. Yeah, it is important factoid.
When we decide to continue to insert ourselves into these types of relationships, do we consider the overall effect that this has on Maryland as a competitive state for attracting businesses? Because I continue to hear that as businesses decide to evaluate different states, they certainly look at the policies that we're creating. So when we mention that other states are doing this, we typically refer to, you know, the Vermonts, the North Carolina, I mean the New Yorks, the Connecticut's, Oregon's, Washington. I know Washington, D.C. is trying to do something, but much more limited than what we're trying to do. Surrounding states, you know, states that are more meaningful, Virginia's, the Carolinas, Pennsylvania. Are we seeing all of this?
Well, I'm looking at the states. You know, I'm looking at New Jersey. Yeah. You mentioned D.C., by the way. I think it's 100% employee contribution. I mean, we're only, you know, well, but okay.
I think we'll talk about D.C.
Okay,
later.
Okay, I'm looking at the states here. I mean, you know, they're not all border states. New Jersey, D.C. Other states are moving forward. Delaware is about to move. Yeah. I mean, this is let me just say, this is a philosophical discussion here. I mean, you either for the $5, you know, set up a program where folks can kick in that $5 a week or whatever, or you just think this is overreach. And I mean, we've had this conversation obviously in our committee on this bill and the prior bill that you referenced, the Healthy Working Families Act. And I can't persuade you, I don't think I'm going to be able to persuade you that this is a good use of good public policy. As I said earlier, every major nation on earth does something like this. I think post-COVID, we've got now 10 states and counting that I think are moving to provide something like this. And again, I think that's a philosophical debate that I don't think we're going to resolve here on the floor.
All right, I can appreciate that and agree to disagree. Again, I think it's important as we evaluate these types of decisions, we recognize what the effects of this piece of legislation, and there may be benefits. Right now, we know that this is a $1.6 billion tax on employers and employees that they will have to pay. We know that it's almost $100 million of startup costs to get this up and running. And honestly, we've taken very, very little time to really study this and to really do a full analysis and to really get other input other than a consultant that was probably hired by one of the advocacy groups. We know that. So we probably need a little bit more time than to set these guidelines in place, ask a department that has just gotten finished trying to handle all of the unemployment insurance requests to be able to now all of a sudden jump in and take on a whole new program with very, very limited guardrails. And I think that if we were to possibly take some time to further analyze this, to get those actuarial studies that you mentioned and talked about, so that we know what the appropriate numbers, when you talk about an insurance program and how the rate, how that tax is determined, we've got 5 or 6 different tables. We have number of employees. We have experience factors, all types of things to get to a program that we know can be solvent. This is a guess. We're guessing with these numbers. We have not taken the adequate time to really analyze and study if some of these numbers are correct. And so you're right, we have a difference in if this is necessary or not, but my concern's more so, are we putting the state in a position of not creating a solvent fund and being liable for any claims that might be requested and not having the funds necessary to pay that. So with that, Mr. President,
Mr. President, could I just add though one thing, because this is not the first year we've had this topic. I myself chaired a task force back in 2016 and 17 on this very topic, which issued a significant report analyzing it. The first bill in this space was 2015. So from 2015 to 2022, every year, now's not a good time. We need to take more time. And even now, we're pushing claims for the first time aren't going to come in until 2025. So from 2015 to 2025, I would say that's a long, long time. Meanwhile, other states are moving. Mr. President, I don't have that much more to add at this time on this.
All right, on the favorable report, Chair recognizes the senator from 2nd District on the report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the floor leader rise for a question?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. You talked about participation, and with the participation, I believe I heard you, if it was accurate, that it would be all employees. There's no floor per se as far as if it's a small business with 1 or 2 employees or a large business. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, we did exclude Senator from 32nd District. She may want to weigh in on this. A single member LLC is not required to be involved, but can opt in later. But generally speaking, yes, we're trying to include all employees. And part of it is, I think, was the Washington State experience is if you start excluding certain groups, like 15 or under, everybody else don't have to pay more. I mean, it is a fisc here, and so yes, the answer is we're trying to do something different than FMLA at the federal level, which is only 50 employees or more companies, which excludes, I said earlier, about 26% of our workforce. So
Okay.
yes.
I appreciate the clarification. I think if an employer has an existing benefit, I think you said it was equivalent or better, that would exempt the employer, is that correct?
Correct. They'd have to get that signed off by the Department of Labor.
Okay.
For the Secretary of Labor would have to make a determination that this plan, private plan, is equal or better, yes.
Now, what about the employee? Would that exempt them from making a contribution as well, or do the employee still have to
Yeah,
contribute?
yeah, I mean, that whole plan would be
They'd be out
correct.
altogether. Would they have the ability to opt in if they wanted to opt in? Like they had one with their company, but they're like, you know what, I want to have this as a
I'm
co-insurance.
not sure I'm understanding. I don't get that. So if you're participating in your employer's plan, you can, what's that? Yeah, I mean, you already have a plan, so why, if it's equal or better, why would you opt out to go to a state plan?
Additional insurance
I mean,
policies,
opt in.
additional coverages, things of that nature. So just trying to avoid a situation
okay,
where
I mean,
someone
I'm
could
not
potentially,
following that.
well, the concern is if someone would be able to double dip. That's where I was going with it. Would someone be able to have the ability to have a plan with their employer, enter this plan as well, and be able to double dip? That was where I was going with it.
I do not think so. I mean, first of all, if they again, I think the answer is no.
Okay, no, that's fine. That was the question there. Lastly, in regards to eligibility, I believe the bill says it's 680 hours as far as when you would be eligible.
Right.
Do you start paying in right away? So if someone comes out, they get hired week 1, they start paying then, or they start paying? When do they start paying into it?
It's the 680 hours for the preceding 12-month period makes you eligible. And I should say this, Mr. President, the reason we went there rather than, again, back to FMLA, we want to get part-time folks, part-time workers, temporary workers involved and allow them to do that. And so at this lower threshold of hours, you're bringing in, again, a lot of folks who would not be eligible under the federal law. So that's part of the policy call here.
Sure,
but yeah, so it's the preceding 12-month period. When you apply, again, January of 2025, you will have had to have worked that 680 hours in the preceding 12-month period from the time you apply for your benefit, starting January 1st of 2025. Well, the payments will be October of 2023, and I think similarly, it's going to be, you'd be paying in if you were, I think the same 12-month period, the preceding 12-month period, yes.
Let me try to be.
In terms of how many hours you've worked.
Sure, but once the program's already up and running, a new employee comes in, they start paying in week 1, correct? Like when they start hiring. They're not eligible to claim a benefit for 17 weeks.
Yeah, I think there's and part of this is going to have to deal with a little bit of regulation. FMLA actually has some provision. You're going to have to work a certain number of hours per week, I think, then to be 12 hours. Okay, the answer is specifically is 12. Once you get hired at 12 hours a week, then you're at that point, if you're working on 12 hours a week, on average, you would then start kicking into the minimum of 12 hours. So it could be, obviously, if you're working full-time, it's going to be more, but at least 12 hours a week at that point you would be kicking in.
Lastly, if you change jobs, you work at a job, you're there, maybe not quite 4 months, you haven't reached that 680 hours. Now you go into another job. Does the clock start over?
It carries with you to the new job.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's in the bill.
Thank you.
And I have to just say, some of these hypotheticals that we're talking about, I think Department of Labor is going to have to promulgate some regulations, and they've been advised that those regulations should be very consistent with the FMLA regulations at the federal level, so that there is as much consistency as possible. And so, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator from the 37th District on the report.
Thank you very much. Would the floor leader yield for a couple questions?
Appears so.
Yes.
Senator may proceed.
I've been really concerned with a lot of, as we move from healthcare going from hospital-based care to community care, we have a lot of small providers, whether they're providing nursing services or support services or community behavioral health. The community behavioral health folks have had a real hard time with reimbursement, so some have gone out of business. My concern is, did you hear in testimony or did you address a lot of those small businesses?
Are you talking about like DDA, or are you talking about, some of the, like we've got, okay. So
you have DDA, you have behavioral health and addiction, and then you have home care, you have hospice, you have other support nursing services. Agencies, some just do
Right.
fee-for-service, but
we,
I know.
we do have I will say, just to, I don't want to get ahead of myself, there is at least an amendment dealing with our disability community. We heard loudly from them. We also have a yeah, okay, we do actually, we have an amendment addressing this issue. It's not yet been proffered, so I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we did hear loud and clear from those folks, yes.
And my concern is that we even heard it from one of our local restaurants last night, that they're only able to be open certain hours because they don't have enough help to begin with. If you are short of staff and you make a contract with the client to provide services, and then you have other people go out, then you're not able to fulfill that obligation. So my concern is how are businesses going to continue to provide the quality of services that they've contracted for when they're not able to provide
Thank you for
the
that
staff?
question. So
Thank
we heard that, and what we've done in the bill, I think correctly, we have a lot of notice requirements. In other words, if the leave that you're going to take is foreseeable, you're actually obliged to give your employer 30 days notice. If it's not foreseeable, you have to let them know as soon as practicable. So we have built into the language some pretty robust notification provisions to address in part that concern, to allow businesses to, and in fact, I think we even say the language is to not disrupt the business. And then there's I should also a hardship exception in here. In other words, an employer can actually deny. What's that? Yeah, there is an opportunity. The leave request and the claim actually can be denied. There's a hardship exception for the employer to say that this leave will really disrupt our opportunity to do business. And so that will be among the regulations our Secretary of Labor will work on. But there is a hardship exception, in effect, built into the bill. So I think between that and the notification provisions, I think it's an attempt, I think, to address that. Let's see. Yeah, like, for example, if you want leave for pregnancy, which is a big public policy reason for the bill, it's gonna be foreseeable, and you will be required to give much long advance notice to your employer. But even no matter what, there is again a sort of a off ramp for a hardship situation.
Great, thank you for those answers. I think it's still going to be a bit of a hardship and a stretch. One more question, and this would pertain to all government agencies, public and private employers. Everybody will have either the opportunity or will it be the obligation to participate?
So under the definition of employer, under this bill, it includes government, state and local government are included. So we're not creating a different set of rules for the private sector folks. State and local government will be obliged to be part of this as well.
Despite the staff shortage.
Well, again, as I said to my good friend from the Finance Committee from the 36th District, these are some philosophical differences, and I get it, I understand it. We've had debate about these issues in the Finance Committee, and I hear where you're coming from.
Having worked in a big agency and having to be the one cover the shift when others aren't available, it really does create a hardship. And I just would agree with my colleague, we probably need a little bit more time to see what the experience has been from a variety of perspectives. But thank you very much for your answers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. All right, Chair recognizes Senator from the 42nd District on the report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Could I ask some questions of the floor leader? Maybe just one question.
Senator may proceed.
Yes, sir.
So clearly this is a brand new program. We don't.
Well,
we
brand
haven't
new
had this
Maryland,
before.
10 other states,
Right.
Yeah.
But in terms of estimating the costs and how much we have to assess people's paychecks in order to pay for the cost, we're sort of flying on a wing and a prayer. Suppose we get it wrong. What happens if this program goes into effect and the fund runs out of money? Does the state do we tap into the state operating funds to provide the difference? How do we make up for the expenses?
I want to give you as precise an answer as possible, but yeah, so again, built into the bill, into the legislation is an annual, we're not just going to set some rate and then wait a few years. Every single year, there's going to be an actuarial analysis specific. Yeah, well, we're starting with an actuarial study this October, so before anything's happened, we're going to start with this first actuarial study in October, coming back January 2023, so we can even do a modification next session before anything's kicked in. You know, it's similar how we deal with unemployment insurance. I mean, honestly, it's not, you know, that's how we deal with unemployment insurance. There is a annual recalibration, but here again, beyond this October of 2022, every September thereafter, there's going to be an assessment and analysis and figure out where we are, and are we even close to having a problem, and then the rates will be adjusted.
Okay, I appreciate the drawing the analogy with unemployment insurance, because with unemployment insurance each year, based on the experience rating, employers might have to kick in more money because in order to replenish the fund, because there's been too much money paid out of the fund based on their experience for the past year. So if you draw that analogy with this program, it's correct, isn't it, that if there's not enough money in the fund, that 0.75% of the employee's pay might have to be increased in future years in order to make the fund whole.
Okay, just to be, again, I said this earlier, that 0.75 is a cap. So we may end up, even when we get going, it could be a lower number. So that cap is there, but to your point, yes, this is going to require some recalibration so that we do not enter the next year at risk of any of what you just described happening. And hopefully, you know, I don't see any reason, absent this Washington state experience where you start a program right before COVID and you're exempting, you know, 30% of the workforce. None of the other states have run into that problem. So again, we're not the first state to look at this. We're, you know, state number 10. So there is some advantage of being not number 1, but number 10 in this case.
So this is sort of like a closed box. The money that comes into the box has to be at least enough to cover the money going out of the box.
You're a very smart guy, and that is true. Yes.
Thank you.
Plus, it's Schrodinger's box, right? All right, Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd District.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. If the floor leader would yield.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. So I think there was some discussion on the introduction of the bill about the taxation of the benefits. Could you share that with the body?
Well, the bill, no, I didn't. What I did mention is at some point prior to January of 2025, which will be the first time anybody will receive, there will have to be some determination by the Internal Revenue Service as to the taxability of, and that's not for us to decide, that's for our federal tax collectors. And so that will then dictate whether there should be withholding and all that, but that will have to be resolved. So all the bill says is, and I'm looking to my trusted seatmate to correct me, yes, IRS would determine what's taxable, what's withheld, just like any other tax, any other assessment. But no, but we're talking about the benefits. So what we're talking about is the benefits received. Is that taxable to that employee? And then of course withholding. But that's up to the IRS to determine. We're not going to address that in this piece of legislation.
Just say IRS determines. That's fine.
Correct.
We don't
Okay.
have to create an encyclopedia. A lot of the,
I wasn't trying to do that. Okay.
No filibuster on your part, please. There was a lot of discussion about the cost. What's the benefit? How would benefits be determined? It hasn't been shared on the floor yet.
I apologize. One more time?
What would the employee get if they had to go out on
Okay,
this leave
so
program?
so when they make this claim to the Department of Labor, there is a calculation that's in the specifically in the legislation based on average weekly pay in our state, what that particular person, their average weekly pay, and there's a bit of a scale. It's a little bit, there's some progressivity involved, and it's a formula, a fairly detailed formula, and that's how that is determined. The other thing is we have a cap that we've put into the legislation. You can't get, when you do this calculation, You can't get less than $50 a week, but you can't get more than $1,000 per week. So there is a cap. No matter how much you make, you're not going to get more than $1,000. So we have a lower and $1,000 cap, but it's all dictated based on this formula. And if you make above the average state wage, weekly wage, you're going to pay it's one category, and then for lower income people, it's a different category, but that's all spelled out of the bill.
How does the bill affect subcontractors?
Subcontractors. The
1099
independent contractors can
now, Mr. Senator?
I'm looking
no,
for
no,
little accounts if you
no, if I
indulge
can.
me,
If I- no, no,
Mr.
I might have an answer. I
Yeah.
might have an answer.
Okay. Okay, so an independent contractor, again, unlike the federal program, we're actually allowing them to participate in the program. If they make a decision not to elect to do that, then they're not in the program, but they have an option, kind of like the single member LLC. So we're trying to be as inclusive as possible with this particular piece of legislation and program. So yes, an independent contractor would have an opportunity to participate.
But it's an option.
Correct.
Thank you. So on a fairly large company, you might have 3 or 4 executives and a couple hundred employees. The executives would receive different benefits. And suppose that there's significant family leave benefit on that executive level. Do they have to be included in the contributions because the vast majority of the employees would require to be eligible?
Okay, because you want me to be succinct? Yes.
Yes, they're covered. Okay, that's fine. What about the coordination between the FMLA and this program? Will there be offsets so that somebody, as our friend from Western Maryland said, won't double dip?
Yes, so the bill specifically talks about the bills. Those two programs are intended to be concurrent. So if you're eligible for this and taking leave or the other, there's an attempt here to make sure there is no double dipping. So if you take an hour of one, it's counted against your FMLA and vice versa.
Okay. So we have an employee who starts in January, he gets through March and he only has 600 hours. Will he be required to pay into his fund for that 600 hours he worked, and then he's unemployed for the rest of the year?
I mean, I'm sure there's endless numbers of scenarios here that. Yeah, I mean, whenever he gets a paycheck, he'll have to do this, this withheld assessment that for $5 in order to tap the program. So if yes.
But he may never tap the program. That's my point.
Well,
He may contribute.
it's a medical insurance leave program. I mean, that's the nature of the beast.
Thank you very much, Senator, for your very succinct.
Thank you, my good friend.
All right, Chair recognizes the senator from the 32nd District on the report.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question for the floor leader. I'm sorry, Mr. Floor Leader.
Yes.
I seem to remember that the benefit for the average employee is 65% of their salary. Is that right?
That's right. It's a little more complicated than that. I mean, if you look at it, it's a little more involved in that, but that's about right. I mean, I have a sheet if you specifically, if you want to know at what wage level, how much would be taken out. So, for example.
No, I'm talking about the benefit, though, not what's taken out.
No, the benefit.
The benefit's about 65%.
Yeah.
Similar to other programs, unemployment.
True.
So there seems to be a lot of concern about abuse of the program, but I find it hard to believe that an employee would be happy only getting 65% of their pay unless they're really sick and really need to be at home or caring for themselves. So, and we don't know yet if that 65% is taxable. So we're waiting for IRS, correct? Is that correct?
Yes, I would
Thank
agree
you,
with
Mr.
that. And for the benefit of the body, for example, because I mentioned average weekly wage. So right now, the average Marylander makes $54,600. They would be paying, as I referenced earlier, about $5.90 a paycheck. Their benefit, starting again January of 2025, will be almost $800 a week for that $5 assessment that the senator from the 36 was talking about. But anyway, that's the benefit for an average. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, Chair recognizes the Minority Whip on the report.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I wonder if the floor leader would continue yielding for questions.
Yes, as a member of the Finance Committee, it's not like we didn't talk about this bill in the committee.
Well, we did, but you know, it seems like in our dialogue on the floor here, which has been very interesting, there's still a lot of unanswered questions. There's some things that it seems a little bit of lack of clarity, and I wonder if we could maybe do some work to continue trying to illuminate that. So I just want to sort of retrod some ground quickly. So this fund, just so the body understands, is clear. This is going to be administered. This fund will be administered by the same State Department. This whole program that's just made it through. We're sort of the other end of dealing with unemployment and some serious unemployment issues caused by the pandemic. Correct?
Of course, it'll be under a new, potentially a new administration with a new labor secretary, and so hopefully they'll operate that a little bit better than the prior.
Yeah. I recollect a very interesting program that was put in place by the previous governor's administration dealing with health care that had some problems too. When you have state departments try to run things that are really better handled oftentimes in a personal negotiations between business and employer or in the private sector, and the state's just going to reinvent the wheel to run it, oftentimes we run into problems, I'm sure you would agree, with sort of creating state bureaucracies to deal with these kind of issues.
Yeah, and I said this earlier, the bill's silent. At some point it may be that a third-party administrator should do it. The bill doesn't preclude that from being an option down the road.
You mentioned the $5 a week, and then you did a good job of saying about $5.90 a week. Since we've been talking a lot about gas prices, we always chuckle when we say, oh, the gas price is $2.99 a gallon. Well, it's $2.99, so it's really $3 a gallon. So we're talking about $6 a week if you're making $54,000 a year.
Right, to get $800 a week in benefits.
If you happen to use it, and if
Correct.
you're in a situation to use it. That's true. A maximum of $800.
Well, that's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it could go up from $6. It's $24 a month for a family making $54,000 a year, or an individual making $54,000 a year. It's going to go up, though, because a lot of people make a little bit more than that. So it's not nothing, right? You would acknowledge it's not nothing.
No, $5.90 is not zero. I would agree with that.
And I think as we talk about this, in the context of just in a vacuum, though, I understand we're talking about it's like an insurance thing. You're paying into something that you could potentially benefit from. But we also have to acknowledge, and I'm sure you would agree, that this body has passed over the last few years several different little ticky-tack, $5 here, $6 there, $2 there. We just raised cell phone taxes, give the counties the ability to raise cell phone taxes unlimited. So, I mean, there's a lot of issues where we've piled on, and this is another thing that's going to be a payroll tax or payroll fee coming out of somebody's paycheck, correct?
Was that a question? Yes, the $5.91 assessment to allow you, if you have to go out and have a birth of a child and you want to stay home, cancer treatment, and all the other serious situations that people care for grandma, because again, not in the FMLA, but we actually allow for that in this legislation, grandma, grandchild. Yeah, I think that's not inaccurate.
I'm really sympathetic, as you know from our discussions in committee, sympathetic to the idea of establishing more of this kind of program in some way. But why, in the situation we find ourselves in, I'm wondering, considering everything that everybody has gone through, particularly our job creators and our working families in the last couple of years, we're coming out of pandemic, trying to get the economy moving again, and we have private sector solutions, things like, you know, I can think of a company that has a duck that's their mascot, who also has an endorser, which is legendary coach Nick Saban endorses this particular company. We don't want to mention companies on the floor, but there's different companies that provide different types of insurance programs supplementally. Now, it may not be the perfect 12-week thing that we're talking about, but you'd have to acknowledge that the private sector has taken a stab at this, and couldn't we, by slowing things down a little bit, learn a little bit more about how we could do something that is not quite so coercive, in that every employee that works more than really a few hours a week has to be paying into this? Don't you think we could?
Yeah, well, the FMLA was enacted 29 years ago, and so it's been 30 years where we've been, had something in federal law, and this big private sector push that you're referencing has not yet taken hold. But as I said earlier, the bill provides that if in fact an employer finds a private sector plan that's equal or better, then that will they will not then be required to participate in this. So there are, I think, provisions in here that allow for that, including, as I say, even what you're referencing, ultimately third-party administrator. That's all here possible. I don't think it precludes anything.
So I wonder, wouldn't it be better, though, for us to figure out a way we can incentivize really small businesses to do this without doing this coercive mandate? Because, again, big businesses, big corporations have more ability to do this. They have more customers. They have more, I mean, they have more workers. They're able to have a bigger pool. Instead of a coercive program that literally taxes every single worker and every single small business in the state, why do we have to move forward with this omnibus?
Yeah, well, as I said earlier, we are again, I'll repeat, the only major nation on earth that seems to not want to go this route. At the federal level, 10 states now are moving quickly, and we've been debating this and discussing this for 10 years in this state. So this big, again, private sector option has not materialized since 2015. And then again, I told you I chaired a task force on this in 2016 and 17. So I don't know how much longer you want to wait, but you know, it's been a long time already. 29 years at the federal level, 10 years here, only state, you know, only major nation on earth.
Mr. Floor Leader, I'm going to ask maybe one or two more questions, and I'll close, Mr. President. You know, you mentioned about we're the only nation in the world that, you know, doesn't do this. Number one,
major nation.
The only major nation. I don't know exactly how that's defined, but that's one reason why, you know, we're talking about this.
Okay.
I'm not in Washington, D.C. We're not in Washington, D.C., so this would not make the entire nation. It's going state by state. I think there's been some concerns that have been raised in other states about this program and process. There's been some good and some bad. I mean, there's been some.
By the way, I don't mean to interrupt, but you know, you pay into unemployment insurance, you may never use it. I mean, this again is not that dissimilar. We're not, you know, that's just the way it works. UI in that sense, I think, is similar.
I'm glad you brought that up, because you would acknowledge, wouldn't you, that there's a very extensive system of unemployment, of dealing with unemployment insurance. Number one, it is federal. Federal has a big role to play. Mr. President, federal has a big role to play in the unemployment insurance. They backstop it. They have complicated, and I'm learning about it as a member of the Finance Committee, complicated systems of rate cards and how that whole process works. And we even have an oversight committee dealing with unemployment that's members of joint committee on oversight on that. With this, there's none of that. We're creating it kind of out of whole cloth without a lot of oversight in it so far.
No, but this is actually a much simpler program, I think, than UI. I'm drawing an analogy about you may never use it. In terms of the program itself, it's actually pretty simple, much simpler than I would say UI. We're not having to deal with the federal government. You know, I think it's a much simpler program to administer.
Last question I would posit to you, and I think it's a philosophical one. Is there some concern and that this could lead to? There's a concern that we have, several of us on this side, that as we talk more and more about where it's paid leave, paid sick leave, but particularly this kind of thing, are we starting to devalue the worker even while we're trying to give a benefit? The way this is set up, the implication is you can really just kind of plug a different cog into the machine for 12 weeks while your worker's out. The way this system is set up in this bill, it doesn't really, in my view, recognize where our labor market has gone, in that many, many jobs are no longer just the punch clock, punch in, do a job, leave, and go home. Not that there's anything wrong with those jobs, I'm not disparaging it, but a lot of jobs now have a flexibility to them where someone might need to take some time off, and the company will pay them for a certain amount of time off, and the company can negotiate and say, hey, I can perform some of the things I used to do, maybe for a little less money for a while I get back on my feet, or while I help. Are we running the risk of, by setting up this program, perhaps even encouraging some soft discrimination where someone's like, hey, if I hire somebody that is because of certain lifestyle choices or health choices, or because they're a particular gender, they might have a baby and I'm going to be without them for 12 weeks instead of what we do now, are we running the risk of some soft discrimination developing?
I would just put this in the philosophical divide disagreement category. I don't think I could add that much more, just obviously a difference in philosophy on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Floor Leader, Mr. Vice Chair, for the answers. Mr. President, I'll just speak for a moment on the bill and the concerns that we have. What we have here, I'll first say that I'm very sympathetic to the idea of wanting to figure out a way where people can take time to help their family members. My wife has been through cancer, and so I was fortunate in that I worked for I am here, but also worked for a company that was understanding, and I was in a sort of a sales role, so able to work some things around so that I could help my wife when she went through cancer. And I know many of us have had issues that have happened with that. So I'm very sympathetic to wanting to do that. I want there to be something that will work, though, and I do not believe that a program that mandates that we take $1.5 billion, that's our estimate for now, out of people's paychecks every year, ties to CPI, by the way, which we've been talking a lot about CPI recently, ties this program to CPI, and a program that will cost $90 million just to start up, $40 million in personnel annually, and $50 million for a sort of a beacon-like system to deal with the administration of this, that puts the Labor Department as the role of the sort of the enforcer, the adjudicator, and the figure-outer of all of this. I don't think that's the best way to do it. And because we've already in the bill, there is some level of acknowledging that with the reporting and some of the things that have been discussed as far as the dates. You know, the House just passed a bill dealing with family medical leave. I think it's the cross-file. And after extensive debate, I think they've recognized a lot of these issues. And while I believe the leadership over there and the committee chairman and others strongly believe we should put a program like this in place, and I may not completely agree, but they strongly believe we should put some in place, but they recognize that we've had a pandemic, we've had record inflation, we're at record high gas prices. There's a lot that local small businesses are still sorting out. And there's a lot that the labor market is still sorting itself out. So, Mr. President, they've passed legislation that would establish a commission to work out the specifics of a statewide family leave program with the goal of implementing something in the next couple of years. But to having the time to really do the actuarial studies and the breakdowns, I think that's a better approach. And even though I'm not sure I want to vote for any kind of mandate necessarily, I'd be willing to look at supporting that as opposed to this. So I'd like to move, Mr. President. I think we should take a little more time. We've got crossover coming, but we have a House bill coming over. I think we should take a little more time. So I would move, Mr. President, to recommit this bill to the Finance Committee so we can spend a little bit more time working on it with our House colleagues. And I'd ask the body to support me in recommitting the bill.
All right, Senators move to recommit the bill. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Yeah, I'd urge the body to resist it. I mean, we've spent 10 years looking at this. We'll obviously have to have a conversation with the House. I think we need to move forward. And, you know, folks have a philosophical problem with the bill. They should vote red, but I don't see any reason to recommit it. So I'd urge a red on the motion.
All right, on the motion, any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Mr. President, roll call.
All right, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote?
Mr. President, should we
Yes.
ring the bells?
We're fine. Just clerk will take the call. With 29 votes in the negative, the senator's motion fails. On the favorable report as amended, any discussion? Yes, Chair recognizes the senator from Montgomery County.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I have an amendment.
But we have to take up the report first.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Do we have a committee amendment? No. The committee amendment.
No committee. There's a couple amendments.
Okay.
So
let's take up those. Chair recognizes the senator from Montgomery County has an amendment. Clerk will collect the amendment. Pages will please distribute the amendment. All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, we heard a concern brought up by our friend from the Eastern Shore and then referenced by the floor leader with regard to concerns that were raised by our friends who work so very hard in the developmental disabilities communities. And we do want to address that concern. The committee very much is tuned into that, and the amendment before you will provide that the state will cover the contribution for those in the developmental disability providers as well as our behavioral health providers. I believe the committee will look at this as a friendly amendment, so thank you, Mr. President.
Senators move the amendment. Chair recognizes the floor leader.
Yes,
floor leader.
I want to thank the senator from the 19th district for the amendment, and that is a friendly amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. Any objections to the senator's amendment? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Are there other amendments to the bill or title? Chair recognizes the senator from District 11 has an amendment. Clerk will collect the amendment. All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This amendment does two really important things, and I want to talk about them separately. We have spent so much of our time over these past 64 days discussing big issues on this floor. We've talked about the struggles our kids have had in schools. We've spent many hours talking about behavioral problems of children and adults and our behavioral health needs. We've talked about substance abuse. We've decried the insufficiency of our behavioral health services. We've lamented at the rising numbers of opioid overdoses and the tragedy of our suicide rates. We've heard about children and adults committing crimes, horrible crimes. We worry about the isolation that we've all felt, especially over these past 2 years. And we worry about what feels like a growing divide in our society. And we're concerned about dislocation in many parts of our community. Do you know what can be a really strong opposing force to each of these struggles? What can be a port in all of these storms and provide a foundation that can be a bulwark against the fraying of our society? And I'd even go so far as to say can help repair and rebuild it, a strong family. And how does one build a strong family, especially in these difficult times? It's time. It takes time, and it takes a great deal of care. Strong beginnings are the most important foundation in building bonds between children and parents. They require time, consistency, and care. And the more we've learned about the development of the human brain, the more we realize that its architecture is building the foundation of human cognitive, emotional, and social development in these early months. And that building process can't be replicated. There is no do-over. Of course, children learn tremendously over the course of their lives, but there are many developmental milestones that are hit that first year of life that have dramatic repercussions later. The first few weeks after childbirth are rough. Many of us in this room are parents. Remember back to those first few weeks, of course, of the joy, but also the pain. And a few of our colleagues are going through this and living through this right now. The sleeplessness, the feelings of inadequacy, trying to figure out what this little blob is saying to you. Why are they crying? They're fed, they're in a clean diaper, and yet they're still crying, and it's 4 a.m. And just when you think you figured out a pattern to their rhythm, when they're going to need to eat, sleep, and poop, they go ahead and they change. And then it begins again, the struggles of trying to figure them out, the exhaustion and the recovery. And the human body is an amazing thing, but it doesn't always heal as fast as we would like. And individuals and partners don't always adapt to the emotional changes of bringing a new being into this world easily. Relationships have to adjust. And what I'm describing is the world of a healthy birth. Imagine if there are complications, if a baby's in the NICU, or the mom has a complicated pregnancy or delivery and needs bed rest or hospitalization, or if the child is born with special needs. Or if in the middle of this upheaval, you learn you have a dire illness. Even under the best of circumstances and the best of time, we all need time. And that's why I'm introducing this amendment, because we all need time. This amendment allows someone who is sick or has recently had a child to have 12 weeks of leave and an option of having another 12 weeks for the same reason. So this differs. I want to explain a little bit what came into committee. What came into committee was 12 weeks of leave and 12 weeks of leave for different reasons, not necessarily surrounding bonding time. What the committee did was they reduced that to just 12 weeks for any reason. And what this amendment does is it is a compromise. And it says that it's 12 weeks and then an option of another 12 weeks, but it narrows the circumstances under which you can do that. One is if it is for bonding time for you and a new child, or for an illness of you and the child. And so I feel like it is an appropriate compromise between what came in the bill, what was done in committee. So I urge the body to support that. I also want to talk a little bit about the evidence to suggest that paid leave is strongly, strongly associated with a lot of really important things that we're all working here to do. It is associated with reduced infant mortality and post-neonatal mortality rates. It is also a time where families can use the time to get immunizations, and there are studies that indicate that this has important long-term benefits for the health of children. Improved health outcomes for children in early elementary school, reduced issues with maintaining a healthy weight, ADHD, hearing-related problems, particularly those from less advantaged backgrounds. It also helps parents to identify developmental delays when they can be there to identify early medical needs, and also childhood illnesses are reduced, which lowers private and public health care expenditures. It also enables people to look for quality child care, and it also helps to contribute to confident individuals who are better equipped for success in school and in life, paving the way for a healthy, quality workforce and strong economic growth. So I want to talk a little bit about the second piece of this amendment. And the second piece of this amendment discusses and clarifies the hardship amendment. There was some discussion of that earlier. In the bill, it is very broad. What this amendment suggests is changing the hardship language to reflect what employers are currently used to in the Family and Medical Leave Act and in the Maryland Parental Leave Act. So it really strikes that balance between the needs of the employees, who are, after all, contributing to this plan, and the desire of employers also in their needs. And the language reflects language that they are very, very familiar with, and it talks about substantial and grievous economic injury. That is the standard for the hardship, which again, they are familiar with from FMLA and from the Maryland Parental Leave Act. So what we're doing with this amendment is actually going to build a better workforce and a better society, because we're going to have our babies have a better start by enabling their parents to be with them, to bond with them, and to give them the best possible start to life. Because when we do that for our children, we build a better society for all of us. I urge a green vote on this amendment.
All right, senators move the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Yeah, just to provide a little more context in the committee. So the bill, as was described, came in with 12 weeks, and then folks can get an additional 12 weeks. Then we had robust discussion in the committee on various iterations of that, and then ultimately, as was mentioned, we took out that all, for everybody, the extra 12 weeks and took it down to 12 weeks. That was a 6-5 vote, different than this particular amendment. So, Mr. President, what I would propose on this one is, I think, talk to the chair, this is not one the committee's going to take a position on. I think this is one, let the body, we'll roll with whatever the body decides, because we were, 6-5 vote in committee, different various options, and lack of clarity. So again, we'll take no position, and we'll just let the body weigh in up or down.
All right, on the amendment, Chair recognizes Senator from District 4.
I just have a question for the maker of the amendment.
Question, all right, Senator may proceed.
So you have a child, so this is for the mother and the father, right?
Correct.
So the father would get 6 months paid FMLA leave with this.
Depending on whether he has an illness or the child has an illness.
I thought it was just you were saying bonding time and...
It could be it could be 12 weeks and 12 weeks.
All right. Yeah, that's 24, that's 6 months. So is an illness required, yes or no, or is it just a childbirth alone?
No, an illness is required to have both.
So
If you have a new child, you have 12. If there is an illness, then you would get another 12, potentially.
all right, I just have a question for the floor leader, or for the leader.
Will the floor leader yield to a question? Senator may proceed.
Yes.
I'm trying to figure out is that the correct interpretation that you have of this amendment as well?
Well, we didn't take this amendment up in the committee. You're talking, I mean, we have I think she's describing it accurately, but we never took this specific amendment up in committee. We had various other proposals that ended up with 6-5 votes and things of that nature. So I can't describe it any more accurately than the...
Okay, so basically what this would do is takes a bill that is a 12-week FMLA and says you can claim it once for that you're sick and another time for another incident. So this basically would take a 12-week FMLA leave or bill and put it at 24.
For this specific category. So yes, so the original bill was 12 plus 12 for everybody. This, and then we obviously made all kinds of adjustments in the committee. This is 12 plus an additional 12 for this very specific, much narrower category. As
the specific category, the specific category is that you have a child, and then later on you are sick or somebody in your family's sick.
I'll defer the sponsor of the amendment. You or a child. I'll defer to the maker of the amendment on this.
It's not a family member. It's if you or your child.
Okay, well, thank you. So, to me, what this does is you're taking a bill that's 12 weeks, which I already have a problem with, because you go downtown Annapolis here. Has anyone noticed like half the places are closed because they can't find anyone to work? I mean, I'm just a little amazed. We go around and we talk to our employers or small business people. They can't find anyone to work. A lot of people in this caucus, we used to go to Double T Diner and get dinner. Guess what? You can't go there late at night because there's no one to work. They can't find people. So here we're going to take a bill that is 12 weeks. This makes it 24, no doubt, because you claim an illness, boom, you get the 12, and then a kid, you get another 12. That's 6 months. And then, I don't know when unless the good Lord intervenes, I think I'm done having children, but we had our children 13 months apart, 2 of ours. So we're setting up a system here where people aren't going to work. And I know other countries have that. This is a very European French model. People don't work, but 24 weeks, come on, that is 6 months FMLA leave, folks. This is ridiculous. I would ask us to reject this. 6 months. Right now in this economy, Mr. President, people can't find workers. Just simply walk out of the State House and try to get a meal served to you. It is like the Great Depression out there right now. I've never seen Annapolis so bad off. Why? It's not because we don't have money. It's because they don't have workers. They don't have waitresses. They don't have waiters. They don't have bartenders. It's because you can't find people to work. What happens to our economy when you get 6 months FMLA leave? Completely outrageous.
Appreciate the senator's offer for lunch. The chair recognizes the senator from Prince George's.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I rise because we do have an issue with folks who are working. There's no question about it. But I think that part of it is there's concerns about how we are treating the people who are actually working. And I believe that this piece of legislation will actually encourage and make it such that certain people are able to stay in the job because they're not feeling like they've got to quit because they've got to care for a parent, because someone gets sick, because they need to do that in order to get an unemployment, so otherwise they quit the job. I think that this actually will stabilize our workforce in a way that we currently don't have. And this amendment, speaking on the amendment, is narrow. It's narrow. It is targeted to a very specific group of people who have had a child, and so therefore it's not covering everyone. That's already been taken care of. And so while we did consider this in the committee, I think that this is a good amendment. I'm going to think that we should support it, and I'm going to go vote green. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. All right, Chair recognizes Senator from, let's do the minority whip. We got a number of individuals. All right, let's do this. Why don't we entertain a motion to special order this until the second session, which I'm sure the senator from the 36 is fast on the draw there.
Mr. President, can this be special ordered until?
Is there an objection to special order until there is no objection? Senator rejects the
Let's
motion
keep it
to
going.
special order.
Let's keep it going. I object to the special order.
All right, well, the special order, motion to special order has been made. All in favor of the special order, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. All right, the ayes carry. The bill and the amendment will be special ordered to the appropriate time and later today. Let's do this very quickly. We've got two messages from the House. Let's do number 15. Clerk will read the bills.
House Bill 318, Delegate Stein, Environment On-Site Wastewater Services Regulation, EHE.
Majority Leader moves so be considered the reading of the bills. They'll be referred to the appropriate standing committees. We've got another one, number 16. Clerk will read the bills.
House Bill 51, Delegate Motz, Talbot County Deer and Turkey Hunting Sundays, EHE.
Majority Leader moves so be considered the reading of the bills. They will be referred to the appropriate standing committees. All right, we're gonna pause there. We're gonna break here. We'll recess and come back. We've got stacks and stacks and stacks. So let's do committee announcements before we recess. Chair recognizes the Chair of Finance.
We actually have bill hearings, and we've got 18 bills to vote on. So why don't we meet? It's 1:30. 2:15.
All right, 2:15 for Finance. Chair recognizes the Chair of Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs.
Mr. President, when are we coming back?
Good question. We'll try 6.
Okay. Mr. President, EHE will meet at 2:15 for a voting session.
All right, 2:15 for Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs. Let's go to the Chair of Judicial Proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. President. Judicial Proceedings Committee will meet at 2:30.
2:30, Judicial Proceedings. Budget and Tax. Chair recognizes.
Mr. President, the Capital Budget Subcommittee will have public decisions at 3:30 today.
3:30 for Capital Budget. Chair of Budget and Tax.
And we might be voting afterwards.
All right, so 3:30 for Capital and voting afterwards. Look, it's going to get tight, folks. It's going to get really tight. The longer we debate, the more gets backed up. So the calendars are looking tight. Just know that as we're thinking about committee and floor sessions. Any other announcements? Any other announcements for delegations, select committees, standing committees? If not, nope. If not, let's do a quorum call before we recess.
Mr. President.
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 46 members in the chamber, and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate of Maryland stand in recess until 6 p.m. today.
Without objection, so ordered. Stay safe. See you tonight.